The Princess Cactus and the Strange Cowboy, an expanded tale. Prologue. The waiting. 7 years before the boy, the desert kept her like a secret it didn't mean to tell. She had been there longer than she could remember, rooted in silence, drinking starlight, holding her breath for something she couldn't name. The world had made her a cactus because it didn't know what else to do with a soul like hers. Too soft for stone, too strange for flower, too stubborn to fade. So she became something in between. Tall, still, crowned with a bloom that opened once a season like a quiet confession. Her spines were armor she never asked for. Her skin held water the way some people hold grief. Tight, precious, necessary for survival. Season after season, year after year, she watched the moon drag its silver body across the sky. She felt the earth breathe beneath her roots. She listened to the wind carry stories from towns she would never see, tales of cowboys and outlaws, of women who walked on legs and children who ran through streets. She imagined what it would feel like to be wanted, to be chosen, to be seen. The desert was not cruel, but it was patient, and patience, when you are alone, can feel like punishment. 7 years, she counted them in blooms. 7 times her flower opened. 7 times it closed. 7 times she whispered to the emptiness, "Is anyone coming?" And the desert answered the only way it knew how. Wait. Act 1, The Found. The 8th year began with the sound of hoofbeats. She was unconscious by then, not dead, not asleep, but somewhere in between. A hibernation of the spirit. Her spines had gone dull. Her flower had stopped blooming. Her body leaned at an angle the wind had sculpted, exhausted from standing so long against nothing. The cowboy saw her first. He was riding ahead of his wife, scanning the horizon for shelter, for water, for signs of life. His horse slowed near the formation of rocks where she stood, barely standing. Her green skin faded to a grayish pallor, her single flower bud tied and brown. He stopped. "Emma," he called back, his voice carrying across the sand. "Emma, come see this." His wife urged her horse forward, one hand resting on the swell of her belly. She was 8 months pregnant, tired, ready to be done with traveling. But when she saw the cactus, this strange, slumped, almost human thing, she felt something shift in her chest. "Is it?" she started. "Don't know," the cowboy said. He swung down from his horse with the careful grace of a man who had spent decades in a saddle. He walked toward the cactus slowly, the way you approach something wounded. "But she ain't dead." Emma watched her husband kneel in the sand, watched him reach out, carefully, so carefully, and touch one of the dulled spines. The cactus didn't move, didn't react, but the cowboy could have sworn he felt something, a hum, a heartbeat, a presence. "She's fading," he said quietly, "but she's still here." Emma climbed down from her horse, awkward and slow, and waddled to stand beside her husband. She gazed at the cactus with the particular tenderness of a woman who had grown life inside her. "William," she said softly, "we can't leave her." William looked up at his wife. He saw the compassion in her face. He felt the same pull in his own chest. "No," he agreed. "We can't." He stood, whistled sharp for his men. "Bring the wagon," he called, "and bring it gentle." They loaded her like she was made of glass. The men worked in silence, unnerved by the way the cactus seemed almost human in its slumped posture, its quiet desperation. They dug around her roots with their hands, careful not to damage them. They wrapped her in blankets. They laid her in the back of the wagon on a bed of hay. William rode beside her the whole way home. Emma sat up front, holding her belly, watching the desert pass and thinking about souls, about how some things get planted in the wrong soil and spend their whole lives trying to survive, about how sometimes the kindest thing you can do is move someone to better ground. She didn't know yet what the cactus would mean to her son. None of them did. Act 2, The Saloon. They built her a home. Not a garden. William could tell she wasn't meant for that. Not a greenhouse either. She was too strange, too specific, too sacred for casual display. So he built her a saloon. A small one. Private. Connected to their house by a covered walkway but separate enough that she could have her own space. He filled it with sand from her original home. He positioned the windows so the morning light would find her first. He hired a carpenter to build a raised platform where she could stand, or rest, without being underfoot. Emma brought water. Every day, she brought water. And slowly, the cactus began to revive. Her color deepened. Her spines sharpened. Her body straightened until she stood almost 6 feet tall, regal and strange and undeniably present. But she didn't speak, didn't bloom, didn't give any sign that she understood where she was or what had happened. She simply existed, grateful, patient. Still, the baby came 3 weeks early. Emma's labor was long and difficult. William paced the hallway, Terrified, listening to his wife's cries and praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in, the midwife finally emerged at dawn, blood on her apron and a small bundle in her arms. "Boy," she said, "healthy, strong." William wept. He wept because his wife survived. He wept because his son was whole. He wept because life was fragile and precious and he had almost lost everything that mattered in a single night. They named the boy Tommy, and 3 days after his birth, when Emma was finally well enough to walk, she carried the infant to the private saloon where the cactus stood. "Someone I want you to meet," she said softly. The cactus was awake, present, aware in a way she hadn't been before, as if the sound of the baby had called something back from wherever she had gone. Emma held Tommy up. The cactus looked at the child, and something passed between them, something ancient and wordless and true, a recognition, a promise, a bond that would shape both their lives in ways neither could have imagined. The cactus's single flower bud, brown and dormant for 7 years, began to tremble. Slowly, impossibly, it opened, a bloom of deepest magenta, soft as velvet, glowing faintly in the dim light of the saloon. A gift, an acknowledgement, a welcome. Emma gasped. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh, you beautiful thing. You see him, don't you?" The cactus didn't answer, but her bloom stayed open for 7 days and 7 nights. A vigil for the new life, a promise kept. Act 3. The boy. Tommy grew up between two worlds. There was the world of his father, horses and cattle, guns and hard work, the brutal poetry of the frontier. William tried to teach his son to ride, to rope, to shoot. He tried to make him strong in the ways a cowboy needed to be strong. But Tommy's heart was different. He was a gentle child, thoughtful. He cried when animals died and asked questions that made the ranch hands uncomfortable. He looked at the world like it was full of secrets waiting to be discovered. Why do we kill? Why do we take? Why can't we just let things be? William loved his son, but he didn't understand him. Emma did. "He's like me," she told William one night. "He sees the world differently." "That's not a weakness." "I know," William said, and he meant it, but there was worry in his voice. "The frontier was not kind to gentle souls. I just want him to survive." "He will," Emma said. "He has something most people don't." "What's that?" Emma glanced toward the private saloon, visible through the window across the yard. "He has a teacher who knows exactly what it's like to be misunderstood." Tommy started visiting the cactus when he was 4. At first, he didn't know what to make of her. She was strange and silent, a plant that seemed almost like a person, a creature that watched him with something that felt like eyes she didn't have. But children are open in ways adults forget how to be. They don't need words. They don't need logic. They simply accept. Tommy would sit on the floor of the private saloon for hours, drawing in the sand or talking to her about his day. He told her about the horses he was afraid to ride, about the other children who called him strange, about his father's disappointed silences and his mother's gentle encouragement. "She listens," Tommy told his mother once. "She doesn't say anything, but she hears me." Emma smiled. "Then keep talking to her," she said. "Some of the best listeners don't have words." When Tommy was 6, something happened that changed everything. He had come to the saloon crying, another day of being bullied, another afternoon of feeling like he didn't belong. He threw himself on the floor beside the cactus and sobbed into his hands. "I hate who I am," he said. "I wish I was different. I wish I was normal." The cactus had been silent for 6 years. She had watched, listened, bloomed once a season in quiet communion, but she had never spoken, never revealed that she was more than a strange and beautiful plant. Now, something in her stirred, not because she had to, but because she needed him to know. Her voice came like wind through dry grass, soft, ancient, tired but present. "Child." Tommy's head snapped up. He stared at her, eyes wide. You talk." "I am," she said simply. "I have always been. You just never needed to hear me before." Tommy scrambled to his knees, wiping his face. But you're a cactus." "I am," she agreed, "and I am a princess. And I am a prisoner of my own form. And I am 1,000 other things the world cannot name. Being one thing does not mean you cannot be another." Tommy blinked. "They call me strange," he whispered. "They say I'm not a real cowboy." "And what do you say?" "I don't know." The cactus was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, she bent, something she had never done before, something her body wasn't supposed to be able to do, until her highest spine nearly touched his shoulder. "Let me tell you something, Thomas. Something I learned in 7 years of silence in a desert where no one knew my name." Tommy leaned in. "The world will try to tell you what you are. It will give you labels and boxes and rules. It will say you are too soft or too strange or too different. It will try to make you small so you fit in spaces it has already built." She paused. "But you must not let it. You must know your worth even when no one else can see it. You must carry your crown invisible and unshakable inside you. You must believe you are precious not because of what you can do or what you look like, but simply because you are. Tommy's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different tears. Do you really believe that? I have too, she said. It is the only way I have survived. Tommy reached out and touched one of her spines, carefully, gently, the way his father had taught him. Will you teach me? I will teach you everything I know. And so it began. ACT 4, the lessons. The years that followed were the happiest of Tommy's childhood. Every day, he would go to the private saloon and sit with the Princess Cactus. She taught him things his father couldn't, about patience, about endurance, about the quiet strength of survival. She told him stories of the desert, of the stars, of what it meant to be alone and not disappear. You do not need to be hard to be strong, she told him when he was 7. Look at me. My spines are sharp, but my skin holds water. My roots go deep. I am tender and tough in the same breath. You can be too. But the other kids are afraid, she said. They are trying to become what the world tells them to be, and they are terrified they will fail. You have something they do not. You have the courage to be yourself. That is not weakness. That is the rarest strength there is. She taught him about self-worth. You are not valuable because of what you can give others, she said one afternoon when he was 8. You are not valuable because you are useful or productive or convenient. You are valuable because you exist, because your heart beats, because your soul has its own shape that no one else can replicate. Do you understand? I think so. Then remember it. When the world tells you that you are not enough, remember that you were made by the same force that made the stars. You are not a mistake. You are a miracle. And slowly, Tommy began to believe her. He stopped trying to be the cowboy his father wanted. He started being himself, gentle, thoughtful, strange in all the ways that made him him. He found his own strength, his own voice. William watched his son change with complicated feelings. Pride, because Tommy was becoming confident and whole. Sadness, because that wholeness didn't look the way William had expected. He's happy, Emma reminded him. Isn't that enough? William looked at his son through the window of the private saloon, sitting cross-legged in the sand, talking to the cactus like she was a person. Yeah, he said finally, I guess it is. ACT 5, the outlaw. Tommy was 9 when the stranger came to town. His name was Silas Crow, a name that meant nothing to Tommy but made the adults whisper and look away. He was an outlaw, they said. A man who had left a trail of bodies across 3 territories. A man who dealt in manipulation and left destruction in his wake. William met him in the town saloon. Crow was charming. That was the dangerous thing. He didn't look like a killer. He looked like a businessman, clean-cut and smiling, with eyes that crinkled at the corners when he laughed. William Harrison, he said, extending a hand. Heard a lot about you. Best rancher in the territory. Man who tamed the Northern Valley. William shook the hand warily. And you are? Silas Crow. I'm a problem solver. And I hear you might have one. What kind of problem? Crow leaned in. His voice dropped. There are people in this territory who don't appreciate a man of your sensitivities. A man who keeps a strange cactus in a private saloon. A man whose son is known for being unusual. William's jaw tightened. My family is none of your concern. I'm not threatening you, William. I'm warning you. There are men who would hurt you for being different, for raising a son who doesn't fit their mold, for keeping something they don't understand. Crow smiled. I can protect you. I have connections, influence. For a reasonable price, I can ensure your family's safety. William stood. I don't make deals with men I don't know. Crow's smile didn't waver. A wise policy. But think about your son, your wife, that thing you keep in your private saloon. The world isn't kind to people who don't conform. William, I'm offering you insurance. William walked away, but the seed had been planted. Over the next month, Crow maneuvered himself into William's life with patient precision. He showed up at the ranch with offers of help. He intervened in disputes with neighboring landowners. He made himself indispensable. And every time, he mentioned the cactus. Strange thing, that plant of yours. Some folks say it's unnatural, say it has powers, say it's dangerous. Rumors, William said. Are they? Crow looked at him with concern that might have been genuine. I'm just looking out for you, William. People talk, and talking leads to fear, and fear leads to action. William began to sleep poorly. He dreamed of fire, of mobs with torches, of Tommy crying and the cactus burning. He woke in cold sweats, heart pounding, convinced that disaster was approaching. Emma noticed. What's wrong? Nothing, he said. Just worried. About what? He didn't answer, couldn't explain the dread that had settled in his chest like a stone. And Silas Crow watched it all with patience. The trap closed on a warm night in late summer. William was in town, picking up supplies, when Crow found him in the saloon. "William," he said quietly, "I've heard something. Something you need to know." "What?" "There's a group forming. Men from town. They're planning to do something about the cactus. They think it's cursed. They want to destroy it." William's blood ran cold. "When?" "Tonight. They're meeting at sundown to plan." "I thought you should know." Crow put a hand on William's shoulder. "I can help you, William, but you have to trust me." William looked into Crow's face, sincere, concerned, helpful, and made the biggest mistake of his life. "What do I need to do?" The plan was simple, Crow said. William would meet the men, reason with them, show them the cactus was harmless, and if that didn't work, Crow would intervene, use his influence, call in favors, make the problem go away. "Meet me at the old mill at midnight," Crow said. "I'll bring the men. You bring your courage. We'll settle this together." William agreed. He went home, kissed Emma and Tommy, and told them he had business in town. He didn't mention the cactus, didn't mention the fear that had been eating him alive, didn't mention the outlaw who had become his shadow. He wanted to protect them. He didn't know he was walking into a trap. Midnight at the old mill. William waited in the darkness, heart pounding, hands shaking. He had practiced what he would say. He had prepared himself to defend his family, his home, his strange and beautiful cactus. But when the figures emerged from the shadows, they weren't townsmen. They were outlaws, 6 of them, armed, and Silas Crow stood at their center, smiling. "Hello, William. What is this?" William's voice trembled. "You said." "I said a lot of things. I'm a liar, William. It's sort of my profession." The men circled him. "You have a nice ranch," Crow continued. "Good land, water rights, and something very valuable in that private saloon of yours. A cactus that blooms out of season. A plant that some say has healing properties. Others say it grants wishes." He tilted his head. "I'm curious which is true." William's hand moved toward his gun. "I wouldn't," Crow said softly. 6 against 1. Those aren't odds you want to test. Let me go." "I can't do that. See, I've invested a lot of time in you, in gaining your trust, in learning about your family, your property, your weaknesses. It would be wasteful to let that investment go." "What do you want?" Crow stepped closer. "Your ranch, your land, your cactus, and I'm going to take them all. The only question is whether your family survives the taking." William made his choice. He drew. The gunfight was short and brutal. William was a good shot, one of the best in the territory, but he was one man against 6. He hit 2 of them before a bullet tore through his shoulder. He hit a third before another bullet found his chest. He fell in the dust outside the old mill. Crow stood over him, unhurt, untouched. "Brave," he said. "Stupid, but brave." William coughed blood. His vision blurred. "My son," he gasped. "Please, don't." "Your son," Crow considered. "He's a strange one, isn't he? Talks to plants. Maybe he'll be useful. Maybe not." He shrugged. "I'll decide later." William tried to rise. Couldn't. The world was fading. "Tell them," he whispered. "Tell them But the words wouldn't come. Silas Crow watched the light leave William Harrison's eyes. Then he turned and walked toward the ranch, where a cactus waited in a private saloon and a boy who didn't fit the mold was about to lose everything. Act 6. The Fall. Tommy was awake when his father didn't come home. He sat in the window of his room, watching the road, waiting. His mother slept fitfully in the next room, exhausted from the day, trusting William to return as he always did. But Tommy felt something, a wrongness in the world, a shift in the air. The princess cactus had taught him to trust his instincts, to listen to the quiet voice inside that knew things before they happened. Something bad is coming. He didn't know how he knew, he just knew. When the riders approached, he counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a 7th at the front, moving with purpose. The outlaw. Tommy had never seen Silas Crow, but he knew, with the certainty of a child who had learned to read the world differently, that this was the man who had taken his father. He ran to his mother's room. "Mom, wake up. Someone's coming." Emma woke instantly, the alertness of a mother who had learned to sleep with one ear open for her child. "What? Who?" "I don't know, but Dad's not with them." Emma went to the window, saw the men approaching, saw the guns. "Oh God. Tommy, hide, now. Mom, hide. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Promise me." Tommy wanted to argue, wanted to stay and fight. But he saw the terror in his mother's face and knew she was right. He ran to the private saloon. The cactus was waiting. She had felt it too, the shift in the world, the approach of violence. Her spines had bristled. Her flower had closed tight. When Tommy burst through the door, tears streaming down his face, she spoke immediately. "Thomas, what has happened?" "Men," he gasped. "Outlaws. They're coming. My dad didn't come home." The cactus went still with horror. "Hide," she said, "behind me, in the sand. Do not move. Do not speak." "But my mom, your mother will do what she must. You must survive. Do you understand me? You must survive." Tommy collapsed against her base, burying himself in the sand, shaking with sobs he couldn't let escape. The cactus bent over him, a posture she had only taken once before, the night she had spoken to him for the first time. Her spines formed a cage of protection. Her body became a shield. "I will not let them hurt him," she thought. "I have lost too much. I will not lose this." Emma Harrison faced the outlaws in the yard of her home. She stood on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, her face pale but set. She had no weapon, no training, only the fierce, desperate love of a mother protecting her child. "Where is my husband?" Silas Crow smiled up at her from his horse. "Mrs. Harrison, so good to finally meet you. Your husband was a brave man. Stupid, but brave. I'm afraid he didn't survive the evening." Emma's heart shattered, but she didn't scream, didn't crumble. She had a son to protect. "What do you want?" "Your land, your home." Crow's eyes moved to the covered walkway leading to the private saloon. "And that thing you keep in there. I've heard stories. A cactus that grants wishes. A plant with healing powers. I want to see if they're true." "It's just a plant." "Then you won't mind if I take it?" Emma's hands clenched around her shawl. "My son," she said. "Where is my son?" "Safe, I assume. Hiding somewhere. Children are resilient. He'll recover." Crow dismounted. "Now, Mrs. Harrison, you can make this easy, or you can make this difficult." "I prefer easy. But I'm not picky." Em looked at this man, this monster who had killed her husband and now threatened her home, and made a choice. She would not let him have the cactus. She would not let him have her son. She would not let him win. "He's not here," she said. "My son. I sent him away earlier today, to the neighbors. He's not here." Crow studied her face. "Lying is a sin, Mrs. Harrison." "Then I'm a sinner." Crow laughed. "I like you. It's a shame I have to." The door to the private saloon burst open. Tommy stood there, framed in the lamplight, small and trembling and furious. "Don't touch her." Crow turned slowly. "Ah, the sun. I was hoping you'd show yourself. Leave my mom alone. Leave the cactus alone. Leave us alone." Crow walked toward the boy with predatory patience. "Your father said almost the same thing, right before he died." He stopped a few feet from Tommy. "You're a strange child, aren't you? I've heard about you. Talks to plants. Doesn't fit in. A disappointment." Tommy's hands balled into fists. "My father loved me. Your father was a fool who didn't know how to raise a real man. But don't worry, I'll fix what he couldn't." Crow reached for Tommy. "Come with me. I'll make you strong." Tommy didn't move. "Who said I'm not strong already?" The princess cactus had listened to enough. She had listened as this man threatened her family, the family who had saved her, who had built her a home, who had loved her when no one else would. She had listened as he mocked the boy who had become her purpose, her student, her son in all the ways that mattered. And she decided, no more. She had been passive for 7 years in the desert. She would not be passive now. Tommy saw it happen. The cactus moved, not a gentle bend, but a violent lunge. Her spines flared outward like weapons. Her body twisted toward the outlaw with impossible speed. And she spoke. "Touch him and I will end you." The sound of her voice, ancient, furious, powerful, froze everyone in the yard. The outlaws grabbed for their guns. Crow stumbled backward, eyes wide with shock. "Did the plant just—" "I am not a plant," she roared. "I am a princess. I am a guardian. I am the thing that survived 7 years of silence in a desert where nothing should live. And I will not let you hurt this child." The outlaws exchanged glances. Some of them looked terrified. But Silas Crow was not a man who scared easily. He drew his gun. "Fascinating," he said. "A talking cactus. Do you talk when you're dead too?" He fired. The bullet struck her. Tommy screamed. The cactus shuddered, pain lancing through her body, green liquid seeping from the wound. But she didn't fall, didn't stop. She pushed through the agony and kept moving. Her spines caught Crow across the face. He screamed, stumbling back, blood streaming from a dozen cuts. The other outlaws fired, but their bullets seemed to bounce off something, some invisible shield, some power that had risen to protect her. "I have endured worse than you," she shouted. "I have survived heartbreak and loneliness and years of being forgotten. You are nothing. You are dust. You are a temporary problem." She struck again, and again, and again. In the chaos, Emma grabbed Tommy. "Run," she whispered. "Run to the neighbors. Get help. Go, Mom, go." Tommy ran. He ran into the darkness, away from the gunfire and screaming, away from the home that was no longer safe, away from everything he had known. And behind him, in the private saloon, a cactus princess fought an army for the boy she loved. Act 7, The Aftermath. Tommy made it to the neighbors. He pounded on their door, sobbing, bleeding from a fall he didn't remember taking. They took him in, wrapped him in blankets, called for the sheriff. But by the time anyone returned to the ranch, it was over. The outlaws were gone. Silas Crow and his men had fled into the night, wounded and terrified by what they had encountered. Emma was alive, shaken, bruised, but alive. And the princess cactus, she was still standing, but barely. Tommy ran to her. She was leaning heavily to one side, her spines broken in places, her green skin mottled with bullet holes and wounds. Her single flower lay on the ground beside her, torn off in the fight. But she was alive. "Thomas," she whispered. Her voice was faint, fading. "Are you safe?" "I'm here," he cried. "I'm here. You saved us. You saved my mom." I tried. I wanted to protect you. I promised myself I would not lose someone else." "You didn't. You didn't lose me. I'm right here." The cactus trembled. "Thomas, I need to tell you something, while I still can." No, don't talk like that. You're going to be okay. We'll fix you. Listen to me." Her voice found strength one last time. "Remember what I taught you, about worth, about crowns, about being yourself in a world that wants you to be something else." "I remember." "Good. Then live it, every day. For yourself. For your mother. For your father." She paused. "For me. I will. I promise. I'll make you proud. You already have." Her body began to bend lower. Tommy caught her, held her, felt her weight in his arms. "I don't want you to go. I know." Her voice was barely a whisper now. "But I am tired. Thomas, I have been fighting for so long. Fighting to be seen. Fighting to matter. Fighting to survive. You do matter. You matter to me. I know. And that is enough. That has always been enough." She leaned her head, if she had one, against his shoulder. "Don't forget me." "I won't. I swear I won't." "Good." Silence. Then, so quiet he almost missed it. "Thank you. For seeing me. For hearing me. For being my purpose when I had lost my own." Her body went still. Her spine softened. Her color faded. And Tommy held her as the sun rose over a world that had lost one of its strangest, most beautiful souls. Act 8, The Seed. They buried her in the desert. Emma and Tommy, alone together, carried her body back to the place where William had found her 8 years before. They dug a hole with their hands. They laid her to rest beneath the stars she had once watched. Tommy placed her flower in the sand beside her. "I'll come back," he promised. "Every year, when the season changes, I'll come back and sit with you." Emma stood beside her son, her hand on his shoulder. "She loved you," she said. "I know. She was teaching you to love yourself." "I know." Tommy looked up at his mother. His eyes were red-rimmed but clear. His voice was steady. "She told me once that being one thing doesn't mean you can't be another. That I don't have to choose between being strong and being soft, being a cowboy and being me." She was wise. Yet Tommy turned back to the grave. "I'm going to make sure her lessons weren't wasted. I'm going to become someone she would be proud of." "You already are, sweetheart. You already are." They walked home in silence, and behind them, in the desert sand, something stirred. A year passed. Tommy returned to the grave as promised. He sat in the sand and talked to her for hours. He told her about his mother, about the ranch, about the slow process of rebuilding. He told her about the dreams he had, of leaving the territory, of seeing the world, of becoming something more than anyone expected. He didn't notice the small green shoot emerging from the sand beside her grave. He didn't see the tiny bud forming at its tip, but when he stood to leave, he paused. The wind brushed his cheek, gentle, almost maternal. A breeze curled around him like a hand. Tommy smiled. "I hear you," he said. "I'm listening." And in the sand, the small cactus unfurled its first flower, a bloom of deepest magenta, soft as velvet, glowing faintly in the fading light. A new beginning. A promise kept. A soul reborn. Epilogue. The cowboy who stayed. Thomas Harrison grew up strange. He grew up gentle in a hard world. He grew up listening to plants and talking to winds. He grew up knowing his worth even when the world couldn't see it. He became a cowboy, but not the kind anyone expected. He didn't carry a gun. He didn't solve problems with violence. Instead, he carried seeds in his saddlebag and planted them wherever he went. He talked to people the way the cactus had talked to him, with patience, with presence, with the quiet certainty that everyone deserved to be heard. He never married, never settled, but he collected souls the way some men collect scars, strays and outcasts. People who didn't fit, people who needed someone to tell them they mattered. And he told them, over and over, in 1,000 different ways, you are valuable because you exist. The world will try to make you small. Don't let it. Your crown is invisible. Wear it anyway. He became known as the seed sower, the cowboy who grew gardens in the desert, who made dead things bloom, who looked at the strangest, most broken people and saw the beauty underneath. The Princess Cactus's lessons, passed on, her voice, living through him. One night, when Thomas was old and gray, he sat by a fire in the desert and felt the wind brush his cheek. He smiled. I hear you, he said. I've always heard you. The fire crackled, and somewhere in the darkness, a cactus bloomed. The end. Coda. The truth. There was a soul once, soft, strange, not quite human, not quite anything the world had words for. She was made of vacant light, of watching stars too long and wanting something she didn't yet understand. The world didn't know where to place her, so it rooted her in the middle of the desert and made her a cactus. But that was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning. Because she was found, she was loved, she became a teacher, a guardian, a mother in all the ways that matter. She saved a boy who would save others. She planted seeds that would grow for generations. Her body was a cactus, but her soul was a princess, and her legacy was hope. For every strange soul waiting in the desert, you will be found, you will be heard. Your story matters. The Mirror's WHO became like a story for the ones who reflected darkness. The desert held its breath. Tommy stood on the porch of the saloon, eyes turned skyward, watching something streak across the darkness. A shooting star, now, bigger, brighter. A trail of fire that split the night in two and screamed as it fell. It landed 3 miles out. The ground shuddered. The horses panicked. Somewhere in the house, his mother called his name, but Tommy was already moving. He rode toward the smoke. The night was cold, the kind of cold that settles in your bones and whispers of winter. His horse, Coffin's successor, a gray mare named Ghost, picked her way through the sagebrush, ears forward, nostrils flaring. Something new, her body said. Something strange. Tommy agreed. The ship was half buried in the sand. It gleamed in the moonlight, silver and black, sleek and damaged, smoke curling from a gash in its side. Tommy had never seen anything like it. He had read about ships in books, had heard stories from travelers, but stories didn't prepare you for the reality. It was beautiful, and it was dying. He dismounted, approached slowly. His hand rested on the knife at his belt, though he didn't know what good a knife would do against something like this. A sound came from inside, a groan. Someone's in there. Tommy moved faster. The hatch was jammed. He pulled, pried, used his knife to wedge the gap wider. His muscles burned. His breath came hard, but the hatch gave, and inside, slumped over a control panel, was a boy. Not a boy, Tommy realized. A young man. Maybe his own age, maybe a little older. Dark hair plastered to a pale forehead. Hands still gripping the controls like he'd been trying to steer the ship even as it fell. His face was bleeding. His eyes were closed, but his chest was moving, alive. Tommy reached in, carefully. The ship smelled like burnt metal and something sweet, something that made him think of stars. He put his arm around the stranger's shoulders, pulled. The young man was heavier than he looked, or maybe Tommy was weaker than he thought. They tumbled out of the ship together, landing in the sand, the stranger's head lolling against Tommy's chest. And that's when Tommy saw his face properly. He was beautiful, not in the way the ranch hands were beautiful, rough and weathered, but in a way that seemed almost impossible. High cheekbones, long dark lashes, skin that looked like it had never seen real sun, and on his forehead, barely visible beneath the blood, was a mark, a symbol, something royal. The stranger's eyes opened. They were the color of nebulas, purple and blue and deep, deep black. Tommy had never seen eyes like that. They seemed to hold entire galaxies, and they were looking at him. Are you an angel? The stranger whispered. Tommy laughed. The sound cracked in the dry air. No, I'm a cowboy. Oh, the stranger's eyes fluttered. That's probably better. And then he passed out. ACT2, the stranger. They brought him inside. Emma took one look at the unconscious young man and started barking orders. Hot water, clean cloths, the medical kit. Move, Thomas, move. Tommy moved. They cleaned his wounds, bandaged his head, checked his bones. Nothing broken, but bruises everywhere. The kind of bruises that came from being thrown around inside a metal box as it fell from the sky. He didn't wake, but he talked. In his sleep, the stranger whispered. Fragmented words, broken sentences, things that didn't make sense and things that made too much. Perfect. I'll be perfect. I promise. Don't go. Please don't go. Father, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll be better. I just wanted you to love me. Emma and Tommy exchanged glances. "Who is this boy?" Emma asked softly. Tommy shook his head. "I don't know, but I think he's been hurt for a long time." 3 days passed. The stranger slept, woke briefly, drank water, slept again. His body was healing, but his mind seemed to be somewhere else, somewhere far away. On the 4th day, he opened his eyes and stayed awake. "Where am I?" His voice was hoarse. "My home," Tommy said. "You crashed in the desert. Do you remember?" The stranger's nebulized focused slowly. "I remember falling. You were trying to steer. I was trying to survive." A pause. "There's a difference." Tommy nodded. "Yeah, there is." The walk away, the sting in the silence. The boy Who couldn't stop moving, a story of grief, yelling, and the first bond. ACT-1, the storm inside. The alarm clock didn't wake him, it launched him. Tommy's eyes snapped open before the first ring finished. His body jerked upright, his feet already moving, tapping against the wooden bed frame in a frantic, staccato rhythm. Thump 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 thump. The bedroom door slammed open. The drawers shot out of their slots, rattling like bones in a tin can. The mirror hummed. The curtain snapped. "Move, move, move." That was the voice in his head. Not words, exactly. Just a feeling. A desperate, clawing need to be doing something, anything, everything. He grinned. It was automatic. A reflex carved into his face over years of practice. "Up and at him," he announced to no one. He threw himself out of bed, his body catching the air, bouncing off the wall, ricocheting toward the closet. Clothes flew onto him, buttons fastening themselves, boots sliding on, hat landing perfectly. Downstairs, the kitchen was riot. Erin stood in the center of the room, hands raised, watching the table walk. It paced in circles, its wooden legs moving with jerky, anxious rhythm. The chairs followed. The spoons rattled. The kettle whistled without heat. "Tommy," Erin called, his voice careful. "Is this good morning?" Tommy appeared at the top of the stairs, vibrating with energy. He didn't walk down. He rode the railing, his body curving with the wood, landing with a bounce in front of Erin. "Breakfast." "The table is walking. It's energetic. Like me." Erin stared at him, and Tommy was already gone, out the door, into the morning light, moving moving moving. ACT-2, the manic helper. The town was busy. Tommy was busier. He helped Mrs. Miller carry her groceries, fixed Mr. Henderson's fence, chased away a group of loitering outlaws with nothing but a smile and a floating rock that scared them senseless, helped the school teacher organize her classroom, carried water for the blacksmith. Don't stop, don't think, don't feel. People watched him, some with gratitude, some with suspicion. "There he goes again," they whispered. "Possessed. The cactus spirit is controlling him. Look at his eyes. He's not all there." Strange boy, useful, but strange. Tommy heard them. He didn't care, or he pretended not to, because caring meant stopping, and stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. Father, disappointment, cactus, death, gone gone gone. So he moved, faster, harder, more. Erin followed, at a distance, watching. The astronaut prince didn't know this town, didn't know these people, didn't know the invisible force that seemed to carry Tommy through the streets. But he knew grief. He recognized the mask. At the saloon, Tommy burst through the doors. The room was empty, but 2 glasses of milk slid down the counter, smooth, effortless, stopping in front of him. The cactus was there. He could feel her, invisible, holding him. He took a sip, floated an inch off the ground, laughed. "See," he said to Erin, "she's still here. She's dead issues." Erin's voice was quiet. 2 words, barely a whisper, but they stopped Tommy like a bullet. The glass slipped from his hand. It didn't break. It froze, caught by the same invisible force, lowered gently to the counter. But Tommy didn't notice. His smile collapsed. His body went still. "What did you say?" Erin's face was open, confused. "You mentioned your father earlier, when you were talking about the saloon. You said he didn't understand." He tilted his head. "I just meant, it sounds like we have that in common." Tommy stared at him. The light in his eyes flickered, dimmed, died. "I need to go, Tommy." But he was already walking away. His steps were too fast. His shoulders were too tight. And for the first time all morning, he wasn't bouncing. He was fleeing. ACT-3, the mother's patience. Emma Harrison watched her son. She stood on the porch of their home, her arms crossed, her face lined with worry. She had seen this before. The frantic energy, the non-stop helping, the way he threw himself into everything and everyone, moving so fast that grief couldn't catch up. He's drowning, she thought, and he doesn't know how to ask for help. Tommy walked past her. "Tommy, sweetheart, can we talk? Kent, Mom, Mrs. Miller needs help with her garden and the school teacher wants me to. Thomas, and there's a problem with the well and I promised Mr. Henderson I'd. Thomas, and I should check on the outlaws, make sure they're not causing trouble. And, Thomas, he stopped, blinked, looked at her with that same bright, empty smile. Yet, Mom, Emma's heart broke a little more. Sweetheart, you've been running all morning. The astronaut, he's inside. He's confused. He needs. I know. I'll get to him. I just have so much to do first. And he was gone. Again? Emma stood there, alone. He's not a bad person, she told herself. He's just hurt. And sometimes grief makes you do stupid things. But patience was wearing thin. ACT 4, the saloon confrontation. That afternoon, Tommy was at the saloon again. Not because he needed to be, but because he couldn't stand the silence of the house. Couldn't stand the way Erin looked at him, with those nebula eyes that saw too much. He was organizing bottles behind the counter, reorganizing them, then reorganizing them again. Keep moving. Keep busy. Don't think. The door opened. Emma walked in. Her face was calm. Too calm. Thomas, Mom, what are you doing here? I was just. Stop. I'm just helping out. You know, the bartender is sick and. Thomas, stop. He froze. The bottles in his hands trembled. Emma walked closer. Her voice was low, controlled. I have asked you. I have reminded you. I have been gentle with you. She took a breath. But you are not listening. You are so busy running from your own pain that you are ignoring the person who needs you. Tommy's smile flickered back on. Defensive. Desperate. Mom, I'm fine. I'm just busy. There's so much to do and. You are not fine. I am. I'm helping everyone. I'm being useful. Emma's patience snapped. ACT 5. The L. You are not a machine, Thomas. The words exploded out of her. Loud, raw, anguished. The most terrifying sound Tommy had ever heard. You are not a savior. You are not a problem to be solved by helping everyone else. Emma's voice cracked. You are my son, and you are drowning, and I cannot watch you run yourself into the ground anymore. Silence. Absolute, devastating silence. Tommy froze. Really froze. His body locked up. His breath stopped. His heart seemed to pause mid-beat. He stared at his mother, at the tears streaming down her face, at the fear in her eyes. Then, slowly, his gaze moved, to the corner of the room, where Irene stood. The astronaut prince had followed Emma, had watched the whole thing. His face was not judgmental, it was not angry, it was just, sad, witnessing. And that was worse. Tommy's mouth opened, no words came out. His chest heaved, his eyes burned. He couldn't finish. He turned, and walked out the door. ACT 6. The desert. He walked, away from the town, away from the house, away from everyone, into the desert. The sun beat down, the sand shifted under his boots, the wind whispered through the sagebrush, and Tommy walked. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't care. He just needed to be away, away from the yell that still echoed in his ears, away from the look on his mother's face, away from Erin's sad, witnessing eyes. I'm not a bad person, he thought. I'm not. I just didn't want to feel it. I just didn't want to admit that I'm scared. He found a rock, sat on it, stared at the horizon, and for the first time all day, maybe for the first time in years, he let himself be still. The grief rose up, like a wave, like a monster, like the truth he'd been running from. Father, disappointment, cactus, gone. He put his head in his hands, and wept. ACT 7. The kitchen table. He came home late. The house was dark, quiet. He expected everyone to be asleep. He was wrong. Erin sat at the kitchen table, alone, awake, waiting. Tommy stopped in the doorway. He looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed. His face was streaked with dust and tears. His shoulders were slumped. The energy, the bounce, the manic motion all drained away. He looked, for the first time, like what he was. A tired, scared, 23-year-old boy. Erin didn't speak. He just gestured to the chair across from him. Tommy hesitated, then walked forward. Sat down. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who had finally stopped running. I'm sorry, Tommy whispered. Erin tilted his head. For what? For ignoring you. For being weird. His voice cracked. For being a mess. Erin reached across the table, placed his hand over Tommy's. You're not a mess, Erin said quietly. You're grieving, and grief makes people do strange things. I yelled at my mom. Your mom yelled at you first. I've been avoiding you. I know. I was scared. I know. Tommy looked up, met Erin's eyes. Why aren't you angry? Erin's mouth quirked. Almost a smile. Because I understand. He squeezed Tommy's hand. I spent my whole life being punished for having feelings. I'm not going to do that to someone else. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. Again? But these were different. These were healing. I didn't want to lose you, Tommy admitted. Everyone I care about leaves. My father, the cactus, everyone, and you. He couldn't finish. Erin stood, walked around the table, sat in the chair next to Tommy, and wrapped an arm around his shoulders. I'm not leaving, Erin said. Not because I can't, but because I choose to stay. How do you know you won't change your mind? I don't. Erin's voice was steady. But I know this. I spent 18 years being told I was nothing, and you're the first person who ever looked at me like I was something. That matters. That matters more than I can say. Tommy leaned into him, let himself be held, let himself feel, and for the first time, the bond began. Not in a grand gesture, not in a dramatic moment, but in a quiet kitchen, in the middle of the night, between two broken boys who had finally stopped running. Epilogue. The first bond. For everyone who hides behind Dizzy. For everyone who runs from stillness. For everyone whose mother had to yell before they could hear. Grief is not a straight line. It is a spiral, a storm, a monster that chases you until you turn around and face it. And the people who stay, the ones who sit at the kitchen table in the dark, waiting for you to come home, they are the ones worth stopping for. Tommy stopped, and Erin was there. That was the first bond. That was the beginning. Not perfect, not fixed, just real, and real was enough. ACT-1, the invisible exit. The saloon door swung shut behind him. The sound was soft, almost gentle, but it felt like a gunshot. Tommy walked, not ran, not bounced, not floated, just walked. The village was still busy. People moved through the streets, farmers and merchants and children laughing in the dust. A group of cowboys stood by the general store, talking loudly about cattle prices. Two women walked past him, arms linked, whispering about the upcoming festival. Nobody looked at him. Nobody stopped. Nobody noticed that the boy who had been everywhere just moments ago, who had been fixing fences and carrying groceries and floating in the square, was now walking toward the desert like his heart had been ripped out of his chest. They don't know, he thought. They don't know I'm gone. He could still feel it. The sting. His mother's voice, exploding out of her like something she'd been holding back for years. You are not a machine, Thomas. You are drowning. I cannot watch you run yourself into the ground anymore. Each word was a lash. Each word was true. And that was the worst part. He walked past the last of the buildings, past the faded sign that marked the edge of town, past the place where the road became sand and the sand became emptiness. ACT-2, the inner monologue. The desert was quiet. The wind moved through the sagebrush. The sun beat down. The horizon stretched endlessly, indifferent to the boy walking alone. And Tommy's mind was loud. She's right and I hate it. He walked faster. His boots crunched against the sand. You're a fraud, Thomas. You walk around with that stupid grin, helping everyone, being useful, and you think it makes you good. But it doesn't. It makes you a coward. His chest tightened. You're so terrified of being still that you've turned yourself into a chaotic mess. The house shakes. The furniture walks. You float. You're not magical, you're broken. You're so broken that even the spirits don't know what to do with you. He could feel the sting again. His mother's face. The tears. The yell. She's never yelled at you before. Not once. Not in 23 years. You've managed to be such a disappointment that you broke the one person who always had patience for you. His eyes burned, but he didn't cry. Not yet. And Erin. God, Erin. He watched the whole thing. He saw you get torn apart by your own mother. He saw how weak you are, how messy, how. He stopped walking, stood in the middle of the desert, alone. How unlovable. The word rose up from somewhere deep, a place he'd been hiding from for years. Your father didn't love you. He looked at you like you were a failed experiment. And now you're doing the same thing to Erin, expecting him to leave, pushing him away, being so much work that he'll have no choice but to go. He dropped to his knees. The sand was hot through his pants. You're not worth staying for. You're just a lot. Too much. Too loud. Too broken. Too strange. He could still feel the cactus, her invisible presence, wrapped around him. But even that felt distant now. Like even she didn't know how to reach him. You're alone, Thomas. You've been alone for a long time. You just didn't want to admit it. ACT-3, the finding. He didn't know how long he knelt there. Minutes. Hours. Time had stopped mattering. The sun moved across the sky. The shadows lengthened. The heat pressed down like a weight. And Tommy stayed, kneeling in the sand, lost. Then, footsteps. Soft, careful, approaching slowly. He didn't look up. He didn't have the energy. The footsteps stopped a few feet away. Someone sat down in the sand, close enough to touch, far enough to give him space. Silence, long, aching silence. Then, a voice, quiet, gentle, unhurried. "I found you." Tommy's breath caught. He knew that voice. Erin. ACT4. The heartbreaking conversation. Tommy still didn't look up. He stared at the sand, at his hands clenched in his lap. His voice came out rough, broken. "Go away, Erin. No, I don't want you to see me like this. I know, I'm, not going to say you're fine." Erin's voice was firm but soft. "Because you're not, and that's okay." Tommy's shoulders shook. "Did my mom send you?" "No, she wanted to, but I told her I needed to do this myself." "Why?" Erin was quiet for a moment. "Because I know what it feels like, to kneel in the sand, to feel like you're not worth staying for." Tommy's head snapped up. He looked at Erin, really looked. The astronaut's face was open, sad, understanding. "That's how you felt," Tommy whispered, "when you were 4, when your father walked out." Erin nodded slowly. "Every day after, for 18 years. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry I've been avoiding you. I'm sorry I've been such a mess. He couldn't finish. His chest heaved. "You're scared?" Erin said. It wasn't a question. Tommy nodded. "I'm so scared. Everyone I love leaves. My father couldn't stand to look at me. The cactus died saving me, and you." His voice cracked. "You're the first person in a long time who looks at me like I matter, and I'm terrified that if I let myself need you, you'll disappear too." Erin's face softened. He reached out, placed his hand on Tommy's shoulder. "Thomas, look at me." Tommy met his eyes. "I am not your father," Erin said. "I am not the cactus. I am not anyone from your past. I am just me, a broken prince who fell from the sky and landed in your desert." He squeezed Tommy's shoulder. "And I am not going anywhere." Tommy's tears spilled over. "You can't promise that." "I can, because I've lost everything already. My mother, my home, my sense of self. And I survived." Erin's voice was steady. "I'm not afraid of losing things anymore. I'm only afraid of never having them in the first place." Tommy stared at him, through the blur of tears, through the years of grief and fear and desperate motion, and he saw the truth. Erin wasn't going anywhere, not because he couldn't leave, but because he chose to stay. "How?" Tommy whispered. "How do you stop being afraid?" Erin's mouth quirked, a sad, almost smile. "You don't. You just learn to be brave anyway. You learn to let people in, even though it hurts. You learn to trust, even though you've been betrayed." He paused. "You learn that the only thing worse than losing someone is never having them at all." Tommy's chest ached. "But what if I'm too much? What if I'm too broken, too messy, too?" "You're not too much, Thomas. You're just right. You're exactly what I needed when I crashed here, and I think, maybe, I'm exactly what you needed too." Tommy's breath hitched. He looked at Erin, at the prince who had been abused and abandoned and still chose kindness, at the astronaut who had every reason to run and stayed anyway. "I don't know how to stop running," Tommy admitted. "I know, but you can start by sitting still, right here, with me." Erin moved closer. He didn't hug Tommy. He just sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder, facing the horizon. "I'll sit with you," Erin said quietly, "for as long as you need, and when you're ready to go back, I'll walk beside you, not behind, not in front, beside." Tommy's tears fell silently. He leaned into Erin's shoulder, just a little, and Erin leaned back. They sat there, in the desert, two broken boys, learning how to be still. ACT5. The return. The sun began to set. The sky turned orange and pink and gold, and Tommy finally stood. His legs were stiff. His eyes were red. His face was streaked with tears and dust, but his chest felt lighter, not healed, not fixed, just seen. Erin stood beside him, ready. Tommy took a breath. "No, but I'll go anyway." They walked back to the village, side by side, the way Erin had promised. The crowd was still there. The people were still talking, laughing, living their lives, and Tommy realized something. They don't need to know I was gone. They don't need to understand, because the only person who mattered, the only person who came looking, is walking right beside me. Epilogue. The truth about being found. For everyone who has walked away, for everyone who had knelt in the sand, alone with their thoughts, for everyone who thought no one would come, you are not invisible, you are not too much, you are not unlovable, and even if the whole world doesn't notice you're gone, someone will. Someone will come looking. Someone will sit beside you in the sand and refuse to leave. That's what Erin did for Tommy, and that's what Tommy learned to do for Erin, because that's what love is, not fixing, not saving, just finding, and staying. The walk away was long, the walk back was shorter, because he wasn't alone anymore. The morning after the surrender, the quiet that follows the storm. ACT1. Waking up wrong. Tommy woke up slowly, which was wrong. He usually woke up fast, launching out of bed, heart pounding, brain already racing through lists of things to fix, people to help, problems to solve. But this morning, his body felt heavy, sweetly, stubbornly heavy, like it had finally remembered how to rest and was refusing to forget. He stared at the ceiling. The sunlight was different. Afternoon light, golden and thick, streaming through the window at a low angle. Afternoon. He'd slept past dawn. He'd slept past morning. He'd slept for hours. Panic flickered. Weak. Distant. I should get up. I should go to the village. I should. But the thought dissolved before it could take root. Because he remembered. The desert. The cactus grave. The cold sand against his cheek. And the warmth. Arian's thigh beneath his head. Arian's presence, steady and silent, watching over him through the night. He carried me home. Tommy turned his head, pressed his face into the pillow, and for the first time in years, he didn't try to get up. He just let himself be. ACT2. The kitchen. Eventually, he moved, not because he felt the urge to help, but because his stomach growled, a loud, demanding sound that reminded him he hadn't eaten since he couldn't remember when. He walked downstairs. Each step felt different, slower, like he was learning how to inhabit his own body again. The kitchen was warm. Emma stood at the stove, stirring something in a large pot. The smell of stew filled the room, rich, savory, real. She turned when he entered. Her face was carefully neutral, but her eyes were soft, hungry, starving. She ladled stew into a bowl, set it on the table. Then she just looked at him. For a moment, Tommy tensed. He expected her to say something, to comment on the night before, to ask if he was okay, to push. But she didn't. She just reached out, squeezed his shoulder, and walked out of the room. Tommy stared at the empty doorway. The stew steamed in front of him, and something in his chest loosened. She's giving me space, he realized. She's not demanding anything. It felt like forgiveness. It felt like love. He ate slowly, not rushing, not planning his next move, just tasting. ACT3. The astronaut in the garden. He found Arian outside. The astronaut sat in the dirt of Tommy's garden, his back against the wooden fence, his face tilted toward the sun. His eyes were closed. He looked peaceful, not the careful peace of someone performing calm, but the genuine peace of someone who had finally stopped running. Tommy stood in the doorway, watching. He stayed up all night for me. He sat in the cold. He carried me home. Why? He didn't understand it. He didn't understand how someone could look at him, at all his mess, all his panic, all his desperate helpfulness, and choose to stay. But Arian had. As if sensing his presence, Arian opened his eyes. He turned his head, met Tommy's gaze. Hey, you slept a long time. I know. Arian shifted, made room on the ground beside him. An invitation, not a demand. Tommy hesitated. His instinct was to do something, to offer to weed the garden, to fix the fence, to run back to the village, but he was so tired of running. He walked forward, sat down in the dirt beside Arian, leaned his back against the fence, and stared at the plants. They sat in silence. The afternoon sun warmed their skin. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a horse neighed. I used to think, Arian said quietly, that if I just performed well enough, someone would love me. If I was perfect. If I anticipated every need. If I made myself indispensable. He paused. But it never worked, because the people who wanted a performance didn't want me, they wanted a prop. Tommy's throat tightened. I feel like a prop, he whispered. Like I'm just playing a part. The helpful cowboy, the bubbly friend, and if I stop, everyone will realize I'm not worth anything. Arian turned, looked at him with those nebulous eyes. I don't want a performance, Tommy. I don't need you to be helpful or bubbly or anything else. He paused. I just need you to be here, beside me, that's all. Tommy's eyes burned. I don't know how to do that. I know. But we can learn together. ACT4. The first normal moment. They sat there for a long time, not talking, not moving, just existing in the same space. And slowly, something shifted. The tightness in Tommy's chest eased. The buzz in his brain quieted. The desperate need to do faded, replaced by something softer. Presence. Arian leaned his shoulder against Tommy's. A small touch. Barely there, but deliberate. My father never sat with me, Arian said. Not once. He never just existed in the same space. It was always lessons, corrections, demands. He looked at the garden. This is nice. Just sitting, being. Tommy nodded. I used to sit with the cactus for hours. She didn't need me to do anything. She just let me be there. Maybe we can do that for each other. Tommy looked at Erin, at the boy who had been abused by a king, at the astronaut who had fallen from the sky, at the friend who had carried him home. Yet Tommy said softly, maybe we can. And for the first time in years, Tommy let himself be still, not because he was forced, not because he collapsed, but because he chose to. ACT 5, the new pattern. The days that followed were different, not perfect, not healed, but different. Tommy still woke up with the urge to run, still felt the panic in his chest, the desperate need to be helpful. But now, when the feeling rose, he had somewhere to land. He would find Erin, in the garden, on the porch, at the kitchen table, and he would sit, just sit. At first, it was hard. His legs twitched, his mind raced. He had to physically restrain himself from jumping up and fixing something. But Erin would look at him, calm, patient, and Tommy would remember, I don't have to perform, I can just be. The village noticed the change. Where's Harrison? They asked. The fence isn't fixed yet. He's at home, someone would answer. With that strange boy from the sky. Some people were annoyed, some were confused. But Mrs. Miller, the old woman whose groceries Tommy had carried 100 times, just smiled. Good, she said. That boy has been running himself into the ground for years. It's about time someone made him sit down. ACT 6, the nighttime talk. One evening, they sat on the porch. The stars were coming out, one by one, scattered across the darkening sky like spilled sugar. Can I ask you something? Tommy said. Erin nodded. Your father, the king. Did you ever feel like you were just a reflection of him? Like you didn't have your own self? Erin was quiet for a moment. Yes, he said. For a long time, I felt like a mirror. I only existed to show him what he wanted to see. He looked at his hands. But I'm learning that I'm not a mirror. I'm a person. And the parts of me that reflect him, they're just parts, not the whole. Tommy nodded slowly. I feel like I'm nothing without the helping. Like if I'm not useful, I disappear. That's the wound talking, Erin said gently. The part of you that learns you had to earn love. He paused. But you don't. You just have to exist. Tommy leaned back. Let the words sink in. You don't have to earn love. You just have to exist. It felt impossible. It felt true. My father didn't know how to love me, Tommy whispered. But I think the cactus did. She loved me just for being. And I think maybe, he trailed off. Maybe what? Maybe I can learn to do that too. For myself. Erin reached over, took Tommy's hand, held it in the dark. You already are, Erin said. You sat in the garden today for 2 hours without fixing anything. That's a start. Tommy laughed. A small, genuine sound. 2 whole hours. I'm basically cured. Basically. They sat in the dark, hands intertwined, watching the stars. Epilogue. The slow healing. For everyone who is learning to sit still. For everyone who is tired of performing. For everyone who thinks they have to earn their place in the world. You don't. Your worth is not a calculation. Your value is not measured in how many fences you fix or how many groceries you carry or how many problems you solve. You are allowed to just be. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to let someone sit beside you without needing to perform. Tommy was learning. Slowly. Imperfectly. But learning. And Erin was learning too. That he could be loved without performing. That he could stay without being trapped. That he could have a home in a place he never expected. They were broken. They were healing. They were sitting together under the stars. And that was enough. Prologue. The safe space. The room was small, warm, and lit only by the glow of a lantern on the nightstand. Thomas Harrison, 23 years old, the seed sower, the cowboy who talked to plants, sat propped against the headboard of a bed in a rented room above a saloon. Beside him, equally propped against the pillows, was Erin of Vilanthus, the astronaut prince, the survivor, the wanderer from the stars. They were not lovers. They were something rarer. Brothers of the soul. Their shoulders touched. Their laughter filled the room. Real laughter, the kind that aches in your ribs and waters your eyes. Thomas had just finished telling a story about a horse that once fell asleep standing up, and Erin had laughed so hard he'd choked on his water. Now they were settling, catching their breath. The lantern flickered, and Erin grew quiet. Thomas, yeah, can I tell you something? Something I have never said out loud. Thomas turned his head, looked at his friend, really looked, saw the shadows that still lived behind those nebula-colored eyes, even after all this time. Always. Erin stared at his hands. I think I was born to be a mirror. The revelation. What do you mean? Thomas asked softly. Erin was quiet for a long moment. My father, the king, he is darkness. hollow darkness wearing a crown, and I think I was born to show him that, not because I wanted to, but because that is what mirrors do. They reflect what is in front of them. He looked up. When he looked at me, he did not see a sun. He saw his own emptiness staring back, and he hated me for it. He tried to break the mirror because he could not stand what it showed him. Thomas felt his chest tighten. That's not your fault. I know. Now, Erin's voice was thick, but for so long, for so many years, I thought I was the problem. I thought if I could just be a better mirror, if I could reflect something beautiful, maybe he would love me. What happened? I nearly destroyed myself trying. Thomas reached over and took Erin's hand. Tell me, all of it, every moment that made you feel like you were nothing. I want to carry it with you. Erin looked at Thomas, this cowboy who he had been raised by a cactus, this man who saw worth in everything, and felt the last of his walls crumble. It will take a long time. We have all night. And so, in the glow of the lantern, Erin began. The 21 flashbacks. Flashback 1, the first reflection. Newborn. The palace of Volanthus. The infant lay on the cold metal floor. He had been there for seconds, maybe minutes, new to the world, new to breath, new to everything. His lungs burned with the effort of praying. His small body trembled. Above him stood the king. Therion looked down at his newborn son, and his face twisted with something ugly. Stand. The infant, of course, did not understand. Could not understand. He only knew cold, pain, the absence of his mother's warmth. I said stand. The king reached down, grabbed the infant's arm, and yanked him upright. The child's legs, useless, unformed, buckled immediately. He crashed back to the floor, wailing. The king struck him, a newborn, hours old, struck for failing to walk. Worthless, the king hissed, already broken, already a disappointment. He grabbed the infant again, forced him upright again, let him fall again, and again, and again. The queen, Lyria, woke to the sound of her child's screams. She tried to rise, tried to reach him, but her body was broken from the fall the king had caused earlier. She could only watch from the bed, helpless, as her husband tortured their newborn son. Therion, stop. He is a baby. He is weak. The king snarled, and I will not tolerate weakness in my heir. He threw the infant onto the bed beside his mother. The child lay there, bruised, trembling, gasping. The king turned and walked out, and Lyria gathered her broken body around her broken child and wept. I was not even a day old, Erin whispered, and already, I had failed him. Already, I was not enough. Thomas's jaw clenched. You didn't fail. He failed you. I know that now. But the mirror does not know the difference. It only reflects. Flashback 2, the silent cry. 6 months old. The nursery was dark. The infant lay in his crib, alone. He had been alone for hours. The nurses had been dismissed by the king, who insisted that his son learn to self-soothe. But the infant did not know how to self-soothe. He only knew that he was hungry, that his diaper was wet, that something, some need, twisted in his small body, demanding to be met. He cried, and cried, and cried. The king entered the room. He did not pick up the infant, did not feed him, did not change him. He simply stood over the crib, watching. Stop, he said. The infant, of course, could not stop. His cries continued, weak, desperate, animal. The king's face hardened. I said stop. He reached into the crib, not to comfort, to frighten. He grabbed the infant's face, squeezed it until the crying stopped, until the child could only look up with wide, terrified eyes. You will learn to be silent, the king said softly. You will learn that no one is coming. You will learn that you are alone. He released the infant's face, walked out, closed the door, and the child, 6 months old, learned to cry without making a sound. I still do it sometimes, Erin said quietly. Cry without sound. Even now, even when I am safe. Thomas squeezed his hand. I hear you anyway. Flashback 3, the broken toy. 2 years old. The toddler held the toy in his small hands. It was a simple thing, a stuffed creature, soft and blue, with button eyes. A nurse had given it to him secretly, a small act of kindness in a palace empty of love. The toddler loved it. He carried it everywhere, slept with it at night, whispered to it in the language of children who have no one else to talk to. He named it Blue. The king found them in the garden. The toddler was sitting in the grass, showing Blue the flowers, babbling happily. For a moment, just a moment, he was a normal child, filled with wonder and joy. Then the shadow fell over him. What is that? The toddler looked up, smiled, held out the toy. Blue, he said proudly. The king's face twisted. A toy? You cling to a toy? You are a prince. You do not need comfort from fabric and stuffing. He snatched the toy from the toddler's hands. No, the child reached for it. Blue, no, you do not need this. You do not need anything. The king tore the toy in half, ripped it apart with his bare hands, then dropped the pieces in the grass and walked away. The toddler knelt in the dirt, gathering the torn pieces of glue, trying to push the stuffing back inside. His small hands trembled. His face crumpled, but he did not cry. He had already learned that crying changed nothing. That was when I learned that love could be destroyed. Erin said that nothing was safe, that everything I cared about could be taken from me. Thomas's eyes glistened. You were so young, old enough to learn the wrong lessons, young enough to believe them. Flashback 4. The first word. 2 years old. The toddler stood in the throne room. His father sat on the dais, watching. His mother lay on a chaise nearby, too weak to stand, but present. She had insisted on being there for this moment. The child's first word. Everyone expected it to be Mama or Papa or the name of a nurse, but the child had learned other words, words he heard often, words that shaped his world. He looked at his father. Perfect. His first word was a promise, a plea, a reflection of what he knew was expected. I will be perfect. The king smiled, not a warm smile, a satisfied one. Good, he said. He knows what he is. But the queen's eyes filled with tears, because she knew what that word really meant. He knows he has to be. I was not even speaking yet, Erin whispered, and I had already learned to perform. Flashback 5. The dinner table. 3 years old. The dining hall was silent. The child sat at the enormous table, his small body dwarfed by the chair. His legs did not reach the floor. His hands could barely hold the silverware correctly, but he had to try, because his father was watching. The child reached for his water glass. His small fingers trembled. The glass tipped. Water spilled across the table. The child froze. The king did not yell. He simply looked at his son with cold, dead eyes. Clumsy, careless, weak. Each word was a blow. The child's lip trembled. I'm sorry, father. I'm sorry. Sorry is not good enough. Sorry is what failures say. The king stood. You will not eat tonight. You will sit here and watch me eat, and you will think about what you have done. The child sat at the table for 3 hours, hungry, thirsty, watching his father eat, learning that mistakes meant starvation, learning that his needs did not matter, learning that he was never, ever safe. Flashback 6. The mirror in the hall. 3 years old. The child caught his reflection in a mirror. He stopped, stared at himself. He was small, thin. His eyes were too big for his face. His hair was dark like his father's. He wondered if he looked like the king. He wondered if that meant he was bad too. The king found him there. What are you doing? The child jumped. Looking. Father. At what? At me. The king grabbed the child's chin, forced him to face the mirror. Look closely, he hissed. What do you see? The child trembled. I don't know. I will tell you what you see. You see nothing. You are an empty vessel waiting to be filled. You are a reflection of me, and if you are imperfect, it is because I am reflected poorly. He released the child's chin. Do not forget what you are. He walked away, and the child stood before the mirror for a long time, trying to see himself, but he could only see his father. That was when I understood. Erin said I was not a person. I was a mirror, and mirrors do not have selves. Thomas's voice was rough. That's a lie. You were always a person. He just couldn't see it. Flashback 7. The sick day. 4 years old. The child woke with a fever. His body ached. His head pounded. His throat felt like it was full of broken glass. He tried to get out of bed, but his legs buckled. He fell to the floor, too weak to stand. The nurse found him there, curled in a ball, shivering. The king was informed. He came to the child's room, looked at the small figure in the bed, and his face twisted with disgust. Sick? Again? The child could barely speak. I'm sorry, father. I don't feel. Illness is weakness, and I do not tolerate weakness. The king turned to the nurse. No medicine, no special treatment. He will learn to overcome his own body. He left the room, and the child lay in bed for 3 days, burning with fever, wondering if he would die, wondering if his father would even care. I survived, Erin said, but I learned that my pain did not matter, that my body was something to be conquered, not cared for. Thomas closed his eyes. You deserved care. You deserved to be held and comforted and told it would be okay. I know, but mirrors do not receive care. They only reflect what is given to them. Flashback 8. The birthday. 4 years old. The child had never had a birthday party. No cake, no candles, no gifts, no songs. The king did not believe in celebrations. You were born, he said. That is nothing to celebrate. That is simply fact. But the child had heard about birthday parties, from the servants, from books, from the rare glimpses of other children's lives. He wanted a party, just one. He asked his mother, She was weak, always weak now, but her eyes softened when he made his request. "I will speak to your father," she promised. She did. The king's response was predictable. "A party? He wants a party? For existing. It is his birthday, Tyrion. He is 4 years old. Let him have one day of what? Weakness? Indulgence? Learning that the world revolves around his birth. He is a child. He is a prince. And princes do not beg for parties." The child did not get a party. He did not get a cake. He did not get a single gift. Instead, his father came to his room that night and said, "Your mother is unwell. Her weakness comes from indulging your foolishness. If she dies, it will be because you asked for a party." The king left, and the 4-year-old lay in his bed, silent tears streaming down his face, believing that he had killed his mother. "I carried that for years," Arion whispered, "the belief that my needs were dangerous, that wanting things hurt people, that my existence was a burden." Thomas's voice was thick. "Your mother's illness wasn't your fault. You were a child. You just wanted to be celebrated." "I know. But the mirror believed what it was told." Flashback 9. The performance. 5 years old. The queen died in the spring. The child stood at her funeral, dry-eyed and silent. He had learned not to cry in front of his father. The king stood beside him, equally dry-eyed. But the king's silence was different. It was performance. After the funeral, the court gathered for the reception. Nobles approached the king, offering condolences. The king accepted them gracefully, his face a mask of noble suffering. "She was my everything," he said to one courtier. "I do not know how I will go on." The child watched. He had seen his father ignore his mother for years, seen him call her weak, seen him blame her for everything. Now, he watched his father pretend to grieve, and he learned something. Truth does not matter, only performance. The king turned to his son. "Go to your room," he said quietly. "Do not embarrass me with displays of emotion." The child went, and that night, alone in his room, he finally let himself cry. Not because his mother was dead, though she was, but because he understood, for the first time, that his father was not capable of truth, that everything was performance, and that he, the child, was just another prop. Flashback 10. The teacher. 6 years old. The child was being tutored in the royal history of Volanthus. The teacher was an old man, kind and patient, who sometimes let the child ask questions that had nothing to do with the lesson. "Why does my father hate me?" The teacher froze. "Your Highness, I cannot." "It's all right. I know he does. I just want to understand why." The teacher looked at the child, this small, intelligent, broken boy, and something in his face crumbled. "Your father does not hate you, child. He does not know how to love." "Why?" Because some people are born with holes inside them, and they spend their lives trying to fill those holes with power, with control, with the destruction of others. But the holes never close. They just get deeper." The child thought about this. "Is there a hole inside me?" The teacher's eyes glistened. "No, child, you are whole. You have always been whole, but your father cannot see that. He can only see his own emptiness reflected in you." That evening, the king asked what the child had learned. The child told him about the history of the royal line. He did not tell him about holes, but he thought about them for a long time after. Flashback 11. The friend. 7 years old. The child was not allowed to play with other children. The king said other children were common and contaminating. The child was to be isolated, trained, molded, perfected. But one day, a visiting diplomat brought his daughter to the palace. She was the same age as the child, bright and curious, with a laugh that echoed through the halls. They met in the garden. She was not afraid of him. "Want to see a frog?" she asked. The child had never seen a frog up close. They spent the afternoon together, crouching by the pond, watching frogs and skipping stones and talking about nothing. For a few hours, the child was not a prince. He was just a boy. The king found them. "What is this?" The child stood quickly, heart pounding. This is the diplomat's daughter, father. We were just fraternizing with commoners." "Making yourself small? Forgetting who you are." The girl shrank back. The king grabbed the child's arm. "You will not see her again. You will not see anyone without my permission. You are not here to make friends. You are here to become what I demand." He dragged the child away. The child looked back at the girl, her face confused, frightened, and felt something break inside. The next day, the diplomat and his daughter were sent away. The child never saw her again. "I never learned her name," Arion said. "I never got to say goodbye. I never got to explain." Thomas's voice was rough. "You didn't need to explain. You were a child. You deserved friends." "I know. But the mirror believed it was wrong to want them." Flashback 12. The achievement. 8 years old. The child won his first tournament. It was a competition of strategy, games of the mind, not the body. The child had studied for months, learning patterns, anticipating moves, training his intellect to be as sharp as any blade. He won every match. The crowd cheered when he was declared victor. For a moment, just a moment, the child felt something like pride. Maybe this will make him love me. The king met him in the private chamber after the ceremony. You won. Yes, father. It took you long enough. The child's heart sank. What? The final match? You nearly lost. Your strategy was obvious. Your execution was clumsy. You won because your opponent was weaker, not because you were strong. The child's eyes burned. But I won, father. I won. You performed adequately. Do not expect praise for adequacy. That is the bare minimum. The king turned to leave. Do better next time. That night, the child lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He had won, and it meant nothing. Because nothing would ever be enough. Flashback 13, the double bind. 9 years old, the child learned about double binds. No matter what he did, it was wrong. If he succeeded, his father said he should have done better. If he failed, his father said he was weak. If he spoke, his father said he was too loud. If he was silent, his father said he was sulking. There was no winning. There was only surviving. One evening, the child asked a question during dinner. Father, why do we not help the people in the outer provinces? They are starving. The king set down his fork. You questioned me. I was only asking. You were implying that my leadership is flawed. That I am not doing enough. That you know better than me. No, father. Silence. You will not speak for the rest of the meal. You will think about your arrogance. The child fell silent. The next evening, the child said nothing during dinner. The king set down his fork. Now you sulk. I'm not sulking, father, you said. I said you could not ask foolish questions. I did not say you could not speak at all. Do you have no thoughts, no opinions, or are you as empty as you look? The child's jaw clenched. I have thoughts, father. Then share them. Or are you too good to speak to your own father? There was no right answer. There was only the trap. And the child, trapped, learned to stop trying. Flashback 14, the lie. 10 years old. The child told his first lie. It was a small lie, an untruth about completing his studies, told to avoid punishment for falling asleep before finishing. The king caught him. You lied to me. The child trembled. I'm sorry, father. Lying is weakness. Lying is cowardice. You will be punished. The punishment was severe. 3 days in the dark room. No food, no water, no light. On the second day, the king came to the door. Do you know why lying is forbidden? The child, weak and broken, could barely speak. Because it is wrong. No. Lying is forbidden because it is a challenge. When you lie to me, you are trying to control what I know. You are trying to manipulate me. And no one manipulates the king. He leaned close to the door. The truth is power. And you will never have power over me. He walked away. And the child lay in the darkness, learning that truth was just another form of control. Flashback 15, the gift. 11 years old. The child found a bird. It was injured, wing broken, unable to fly. It lay in the garden, cheeping weakly, dying. The child picked it up, held it gently. He did not know how to help, but he could not leave it. He hid it in his room. For 3 days, he cared for it, fed it drops of water, kept it warm, whispered to it that it would be okay. On the 4th day, the bird died. The child wept. The king found him holding the dead bird. What is this? The child tried to hide it, but it was too late. It was hurt. I was trying to. You brought filth into the palace? A disease-ridden creature? For what? To save it. The child's voice was small. Yes. The king's face twisted with contempt. You could not save it. Because you are weak. Everything you touch dies. He took the bird from the child's hands and threw it into the fire. Learn from this. You cannot save anything. Not even yourself. I believed him. Arian whispered. I believed that I destroyed everything I touched. I was afraid to care about anything for years. Thomas's voice was thick with tears. That bird knew kindness in its last days. You gave it that. Your father couldn't see it, but it mattered. I know. No. But then, he shook his head. Then, I just believed I was poison. Flashback 16, the comparison. 12 years old. The king invited a neighboring king to the palace. The visiting king brought a son, a boy the same age as the child, but stronger, louder, more confident, a warrior in training. Everything the child was not. The two boys stood side by side while their fathers talked. You see, my son, the visiting king said he has already killed his first beast. He will be a great warrior. The child's father looked at the other boy, then at his son. Yes, he said, a fine boy, a real prince. The child heard the words his father did not say. Unlike you, That night, the king came to the child's room. You saw him, the other prince. Yes, father, that is what a son should be, strong, bold, unafraid. The child said nothing. You are none of those things. You are soft, quiet, weak, but it is not too late to change. He gripped the child's shoulder. You will train harder. You will become what he is, or you will cease to be my son. The child trained until his body screamed. He forced himself to fight, to lift, to run. He pushed past every limit, every instinct, every part of himself that was not a warrior, and he became strong, but not in the way his father wanted, because inside, he was still soft. He had just learned to hide it. Flashback 17, the mirror cracks. 13 years old, the child stood before the mirror in his room. He was changing. His body was growing. His face was becoming something different, something that did not look like his father. For the first time, he saw himself as separate. I am not him. The king found him there. What are you doing? The child turned. I was just looking, father. At what? At myself. The king's face darkened. Yourself? There is no yourself. There is only Amy. You are my blood, my creation. You belong to Amy. He grabbed the child's arm. Do not forget what you are. You are a reflection. And if you try to become something else, he squeezed until the child's bones creaked. I will break you. He released the child and walked out. But something had changed. The mirror had cracked, and the child had seen himself on the other side. That was the first time, Arian said, that I knew the truth. I was not a mirror. I was a person. My father was trying to erase me, but I existed. Thomas nodded slowly. That's when you started to fight back. Yes, but it would be years before I could win. Flashback 18, the escape plan. 15 years old, the boy began to dream of leaving. He had always known he would have to escape, but now, at 15, he started to plan. He studied the palace guards, learned their schedules, found the blind spots. He studied the ships in the hangar, learned their systems, found the one he could repair. He studied the stars, learned their paths, found the worlds he could reach. But the king was watching. He always was. You think I do not know what you are planning? The boy's blood ran cold. Father, you think you can leave me? You think you can abandon your duty, your family, your king? The boy said nothing. The king's face twisted. You are nothing without me, nothing. And if you try to leave, I will find you. I will drag you back, and I will make you wish you had never been born. He grabbed the boy's face. You are mine. The boy did not stop planning, but he became more careful. He learned to hide his thoughts, his dreams, his self. He learned to become a perfect mirror, one that reflected exactly what his father wanted to see. While inside, he built a ship. Flashback 19, the last hope. 16 years old, the boy's mother had been dead for 11 years, but sometimes, in his dreams, she came to him. This night, she came again. You are light, she said. You are love. You are everything I ever dreamed of. I'm trying to believe that, he whispered in his dream. I know. It is hard. The world has tried to make you forget. I'm so tired. I know. But you must keep going. You must remember your worth. How do I remember when everything tells me I have none? Because I am inside you. My love is inside you. And no one, not even your father, can take that away. She touched his face. You are not a mirror, my son. You are a soul, and souls cannot be destroyed. The boy awoke with tears on his face. But for the first time in years, he felt something like hope. Flashback 20, the failed escape. 17 years old, the boy made his first attempt. He had repaired the ship, had gathered supplies, had waited for the night when the guards were weakest. He almost made it. He was at the hangar door when the king's voice stopped him. Going somewhere. The boy froze. The king stood in the doorway, surrounded by guards. Did you really think I would let you go? That I would not be watching? The boy's heart pounded. I cannot stay here. I will die if I stay. Then die. But you will die here. You will not leave me. The king turned to the guards. Take him to the tower. Lock him in. Let him think about what he has done. The boy spent a month in the tower. A month of darkness, of hunger, of his father's voice through the door, whispering poison. But he did not break, because he knew, now, that he was not what his father said. He was a soul, and souls could not be destroyed. Flashback 21, the final escape. 18 years old, the boy escaped on a night of storms. The lightning masked the sound of his ship. The rain hid his tracks. The chaos gave him the seconds he needed. He ran to the hangar, activated the ship, launched into the storm, and as the palace fell away beneath him, as the atmosphere gave way to stars, the boy felt something he had never felt before. Freedom. The king's voice came through the communicator, screaming with rage. You cannot leave Emmy. You are nothing without Emmy. I will find you. I will destroy you. The boy, the prince, the soul, reached forward and turned off the communicator. Silence, peace, freedom. He looked out at the stars, endless and bright, and for the first time in 18 years, he spoke his own truth. I am not nothing. I am Erin, and I am free. The healing. Erin fell silent. The lantern had burned low. The night had deepened. Thomas's hand still held Erin's, warm and steady. They sat together for a long time. Finally, Thomas spoke. You were never a mirror. Erin's breath caught. What? You were never a mirror. A mirror is an object. It has no self. It only reflects what stands before it. Thomas turned to face Erin fully. But you were always a person who was forced to reflect. There's a difference. What difference? A mirror doesn't feel pain when it's cracked. A mirror doesn't dream of escape. A mirror doesn't fight back. Thomas's eyes were fierce. You did all of those things. You were never a mirror. You were a prisoner. And prisoners are not the same as objects. Erin stared at Thomas. Something shifted inside, something that had been stuck for years. I thought I was born to reflect. That it was my purpose. Your purpose is whatever you choose, not what your father chose, not what the world chose. Thomas squeezed Erin's hand. You get to decide who you are, and you don't have to give a shit about what anyone else thinks. Erin laughed, a wet, broken sound. I don't have to give a shit. No, that's the secret. That's what the princess cactus taught me. That's what your mother taught you. That's what every abused child eventually learns. Thomas smiled. You don't have to give a shit about the people who tried to break you. You don't have to earn their love. You don't have to prove your worth. You just have to know it. Know it. Know it. Deep down, in your bones. You are worthy, not because of what you can do, not because of who your father is, but because you exist. Erin was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. A real smile. Soft and genuine. I think I know it now. Good. And if you ever forget, I'll remind you. And I'll remind you. They sat in the dark, shoulders touching, holding hands. Brothers of the soul. And outside, the stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal. But inside, something had healed. The truth about mirrors. For anyone who needs to hear this, if you were raised by a narcissist, you may feel like a mirror. You may feel like you have no self, only reflections of what others want you to be. You may feel like you are empty, broken, wrong, but I need you to know the truth. You are not a mirror. You are a soul, and souls cannot be destroyed. Narcissists will try to convince you that you are nothing without them, that you are weak, ungrateful, disappointing, that you exist only to serve their needs. But they are lying, not because they don't believe it, but because they cannot tolerate the truth. The truth is, you are a separate person. You have your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own worth, and nothing they say can change that. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to earn love. You do not have to reflect what they want to see. The king was gone, shattered into 1,000 particles of light that had scattered across the desert wind. But the silence he left behind was not empty. It was full of old habits, old fears, old patterns that had hardened into bone. Erin stood by the campfire, watching the flames dance, feeling the warmth on his face. Thomas sat nearby, cleaning his saddle, humming a tune that had no name. Everything should have been fine. The monster was dead. The past was over. The future was wide open. But Erin felt something crawling under his skin. A knowing. A terrible, aching knowing. It wasn't just the king. Thomas, Erin said quietly. The cowboy looked up. Yet, I need to tell you something. Something I didn't say before. Thomas set down his saddle, gave Erin his full attention, the way he always did, the way Erin still wasn't used to. What is it? Erin took a breath. I told you about my father. About a mirror. About learning to reflect what he wanted to see. He paused. But I didn't tell you what happened after I escaped. I didn't tell you about the others. What others? Erin's eyes grew distant. The 100. ACT2, the 100 false lights. When Erin fled Volanthus, he was 18 years old. He had never been free, never made a friend without his father's permission, never chosen anything for himself. He was a mirror, trained to reflect, trained to please, trained to become whatever someone else needed, and he carried the training with him like a disease. The pattern. It started with the first person who showed him kindness, a trader on a distant moon who offered him food and passage. Erin, starving and desperate, had looked into the trader's eyes and seen what the man wanted. He wants a son. He wants someone to need him. So Erin became that. He laughed at the trader's jokes, agreed with his opinions, made himself small, grateful, pliable, and for a while, it worked. The traitor was kind, protective, loving, until he wasn't. Until the traitor's own darkness surfaced. The rage beneath the kindness, the cruelty beneath the care. Until the traitor began to hit him, then apologize, then hit him again. Until Erin realized, I have found another version of my father. He left, but he didn't learn. Over 2 years of wandering, Erin met 100 people, not literally, perhaps, but close enough. Friends who turned into tyrants, lovers who turned into captors, mentors who turned into monsters. Each time, Erin saw what they wanted him to see: kindness, light, promise. Each time, he became what they needed, and each time, the darkness underneath revealed itself, too late. I thought they were light, Erin said, his voice hollow. Every single one. They smiled at me, they welcomed me, they made me feel safe. He looked at Thomas, and every single one of them was darkness dressed in light's clothing. I attracted them like moths to flame, or maybe I was the flame, and they were the moths, eating away at me until nothing was left. Thomas listened, his face grave. What made them darkness? They needed me to be small, to be what they wanted. And when I started to show myself, when the mirror began to crack, they turned on me. Every time. The list. Erin closed his eyes. There was a woman on Centauri Prime who said she wanted to help me. She fed me, clothed me, gave me a room. But when I disagreed with her about something small, something that shouldn't have mattered, she locked me in a closet for 2 days. Said I was ungrateful. Said I had betrayed her. His voice grew quieter. There was a man on a moon I don't remember the name of. He said he loved me. Said I was his family. But when I tried to leave, when I said I needed to go, he pulled a knife. Said if I left, he would kill himself, and it would be my fault. There was a group of travelers who let me join their caravan. They seemed kind, generous. But slowly, they asked for more and more, my labor, my money, myself. And when I had nothing left to give, they left me in the desert to die. 100, Erin whispered, or close enough. 100 false lights. 100 people who looked like salvation and turned out to be traps. He opened his eyes. I thought I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me, that I attracted darkness because I was darkness. But now I understand. What? Thomas asked softly. I was a mirror, and mirrors do not choose what they reflect. I was trained to become what people wanted, and the people who wanted a mirror, who wanted someone to bend to their needs, were always the broken ones. ACT3, the Cowboy's darkness. The fire crackled. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. So you're telling me you've met 100 people who hurt you, who used you, who turned out to be monsters in disguise? Yes, and you're afraid I'm the 101st. It wasn't a question. Erin flinched. I don't want to be. But, yes. Part of me is terrified. Part of me is waiting for the darkness underneath. Waiting for you to turn. Thomas nodded slowly. Look at me, Erin. Erin met his eyes. I'm not going to tell you I'm perfect. I'm not going to tell you I don't have darkness. Because I do. Erin's heart clenched. I have anger, Thomas said. I have fear. I have the darkness that lives in me, the darkness of a father who was disappointed in me, of a childhood where I never fit, of a loneliness that went so deep I thought it would swallow me whole. He took a breath. I've hurt people, not on purpose, but I have. I've said the wrong things, made the wrong choices. I've been selfish when I should have been kind. I've been weak when I should have been strong. He held Erin's gaze. I am not light. I am not a savior. I am a man with cracks and scars and shadows. Erin's voice trembled. Then how do I know you won't hurt me? Thomas smiled, soft, sad, real. You don't. You can't. But here's the difference between me and the others. He leaned forward. I am not asking you to be a mirror. What? I don't need you to reflect what I want to see. I don't need you to agree with me, or please me, or become what I need. I just need you to be you, even the parts that are messy, even the parts that challenge me. He gestured between them. This isn't a transaction. It's not about what you can give me. It's about standing beside each other while we both try to be whole. Erin stared at him. But what if my darkness triggers yours? What if I reflect something in you that you can't face? Thomas's smile deepened. Then I'll face it. Because I'm not your father, and I'm not the 100 false lights. I'm the cowboy who was raised by a cactus, and I learned something a long time ago. What? That darkness isn't the enemy. The enemy is pretending the darkness isn't there. And I would rather stand in the truth with you than in a lie that feels safe. ACT4, the reflection. Erin felt something shift. He had spent his whole life being what others needed, and here was Thomas, asking him to be nothing but himself. But that was terrifying, because Erin didn't know if he could stop reflecting. Let me try something, he said slowly. Thomas nodded. Anything. Erin took a breath. I see you, Thomas. I see the cowboy who pretends to be strong but feels weak. I see the man who travels and plants seeds because he's afraid to stay in one place. I see the boy whose father didn't know how to love him and who still doesn't know if he's worth loving. He paused. I see your darkness, and it scares me. Thomas's face didn't change. He didn't flinch, didn't get angry, didn't leave. He just nodded. Okay, what else? Arian blinked. What else? What else do you see? What else are you afraid of? Arian's heart pounded. I'm afraid you'll leave. I'm afraid you'll wake up one day and realize I'm too much work. I'm afraid you'll see my darkness and decide it's not worth the trouble. His voice cracked. I'm afraid you're going to hurt me, and I'm afraid I'll deserve it. Thomas stood up. He walked over to Arian, sat down beside him, looked him in the eye. I hear you, Thomas said, and I'm not leaving. You can't promise that. I can, because here's the thing, Arian. I've been where you are. I've been the one who thought he was too broken to love, and someone showed me that I was wrong. He reached out and took Arian's hands. So now I'm showing you, you are not too much work. Your darkness is not too heavy, and you do not deserve to be hurt. Not by me, not by anyone. Arian's eyes filled with tears. But the hundred were wrong. They saw a mirror and used it. I see a person and I'm choosing to stay. He squeezed Arian's hands. I'm not going anywhere. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. You're stuck with me, Prince. So get used to it. The dust hadn't settled in years. Thomas found him by the dried riverbed, where the water used to run before the drought took everything. The outlaw sat on a rock like he'd been waiting, like he knew this day would come. Your father had that same look, the outlaw said. Didn't stand, didn't reach for his gun, just sat there, picking dirt from under his nails. That same heavy stare, like he was carrying something too big for his chest. Thomas didn't move. His hand stayed loose at his side, ready. The sun burned the back of his neck. You came here to kill me, the outlaw continued. But you're not here for that. You're here because you don't know who you are without the chase. Shut your mouth. You've spent so long hunting, you forgot what you were protecting. The outlaw finally stood, slow, deliberate. That friend of yours, Arian, he follows you like a shadow, mirrors you, makes you feel like you matter. A pause, heavy as stone. But what happens when he stops? What happens when he looks at you and sees your father instead? Thomas's jaw tightened. He won't he? The outlaw stepped closer. You're so desperate to be different from your father, but you're becoming him. The silence, the distance, the way you'd rather die than ask for help. His voice dropped lower, poison wrapped in velvet. Arian sees it. He just hasn't said it yet. I said shut your mouth. He'll leave, or worse, he'll stay and look right through you, and you'll finally understand that you were never the hero of this story. You were just a boy who couldn't save his father and can't save himself. Thomas charged. No thought, no plan, just rage moving through him like a landslide. He tackled the outlaw into the dirt, fists connecting with bone and flesh. The outlaw laughed, actually laughed, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. There it is. That's your father's rage. His fists. His destruction. Thomas grabbed the outlaw by the collar, hauled him up, slammed him against a tree. His vision blurred. His chest heaved. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. And then, through the red haze, he heard Arian's voice, calling his name, far away, getting closer. The outlaw saw it, the crack in Thomas's armor, the thing that could break him. You love him, the outlaw said quietly, not a taunt, an observation. You love him and you've never said it, because you're terrified he'll see you the way you see yourself. Thomas's grip loosened, just a fraction. You think if you say it out loud, he'll realize he deserves better than a hollowed-out cowboy chasing ghosts. The outlaw's eyes locked onto Thomas's. You think he mirrors you because he admires you, but maybe he mirrors you because he's trying to show you what you can't see on your own. Thomas released him, stumbled back. The outlaw reached into his coat. Thomas flinched, but what emerged wasn't a gun. It was a mirror, small, oval, the glass clouded with age. Look, the outlaw said. See for yourself. Thomas stared at the glass. His own face looked back, older than he remembered. Tired, eyes that had seen too much and said too little. And behind him, Arian, approaching on horseback, face twisted with concern. He's not mirroring you anymore, the outlaw whispered. He's reflecting what you've become. Thomas grabbed the mirror and slammed it into the ground. Glass shattered, shards scattered like teeth across the dirt. It's not Emmy. It's not. But the outlaw was already moving, shoving Thomas backward, and from the ridge, men on horseback appeared, more of them, circling like vultures. Thomas's hand went to his gun, empty. He dropped it in the scuffle. He didn't scramble, didn't beg, just stood there, bleeding from a cut above his eye, staring into the outlaw's face. "You've got nothing," the outlaw said. "I've got enough." The first man charged. Thomas sidestepped, drove an elbow into his throat. The second came from the left. Thomas caught his arm, twisted, threw him into the third. Bones crunched. Dust rose. The world became a blur of fists and blood and the sound of bodies hitting hard earth. And then Arian was there, not calling Thomas's name, not asking if he was okay, just moving, calculated, precise, telling the men to look at themselves, to see what they'd become. His voice carried something heavy, authority, truth. The men's faces contorted. Something in them cracked. They ran. But the outlaw wasn't running. His body started to shift, shoulders bending backward at wrong angles, legs twisting, skin flushing purple like something rotten underneath was finally surfacing. Nails lengthened into claws. His jaw unhinged, and the sound that came out wasn't human. Thomas didn't move, didn't reach for Arian, didn't show fear. He just stood there, unarmed, ready. The creature that was once the outlaw lunged. The fight was ugly. No grace, no strategy, just survival. Thomas took hits that should have killed him, a claw across the chest, blood spraying dark against the dirt. His vision flickered. His legs threatened to give, but he kept standing. Arian joined the fight, positioning himself between Thomas and the creature, drawing its attention, calculated and calm. He told Thomas to stay down. Thomas didn't. He couldn't. The creature fell, eventually, collapsed into itself, purple skin withering, claws retracting into human fingers. The outlaw's face stared up at the sky, unseeing. Thomas dropped to his knees. Blood soaked through his shirt. His chest felt like it was on fire. Arian was there, hand on Thomas's chest, pressing down, stopping the bleeding. "You're okay," Arian said. "You're okay." Thomas looked up at him. The man who'd followed him, mirrored him, stayed. Thomas started. His voice cracked. "I never said it." Arian's hand stayed steady. "I know. I love you. I know." Thomas laughed. "Wet. Broken. You're supposed to say it back." Arian smiled. "Sad. Tired. Real. I've been saying it for years. You just couldn't hear it." Thomas ran. Not because he was afraid. Not because he couldn't face what came next. He ran because his body remembered how to move and his mind had forgotten how to stay. He ran until his lungs burned. Until his legs gave out. Until he collapsed somewhere between the riverbed and the town, crying into the dirt like a child. Arian didn't follow. Not this time. The realm opened its mouth and swallowed. Thomas stood at the edge of a world that didn't follow rules. 3 creatures watched him from different angles, each one stranger than the last. The first was tall, too tall, limbs made of driftwood and spider silk, with a head that flickered between the lantern and a scream. It didn't speak, just hummed, a sound that vibrated in Thomas's teeth. The second rolled toward him, a ball of mismatched fabric and button eyes, unspooling as it moved, revealing legs made of knitting needles. It clicked when it walked. The third hung upside down from a branch that grew from the sky. Its body was made of forgotten letters, envelopes and stamps and dried ink. It smelled like attics, like things left behind. Coffin barked. Once, twice, a warning. Thomas didn't run. He was too tired for running. Too heavy. The grief in his chest had roots now, and those roots had grown deep into the strange soil beneath his boots. He looked at the creatures. Really looked. "You're stuck here too," he said quietly. The lantern head flickered. The knitting needle legs stopped clicking. The envelope body rustled. They didn't attack. They nodded. And just like that, Thomas had allies. The vine found him an hour later, or maybe a year. Time moved like syrup here. It crawled up his boot, green and brown, pulsing, tightened around his ankle like it belonged there. Thomas looked down, exhausted, eyes half closed. "You coming with me?" he asked. The vine squeezed gently. An answer. "Fine. Keep up." He didn't flinch, didn't shake it off. "In this place, you took loyalty where you found it." The snake appeared in silence, red, scales like dried blood. Its head was upside down, jaws on top, eyes on the bottom, and its tongue didn't flicker. It lifted, floated upward like smoke from a dying fire. Thomas felt it immediately. The forgetting. His father's laugh, gun, Arian's hand on his shoulder, fading. His own name, slipping like whetstone. Memory after memory peeled away, rising, disappearing into the snake's inverted mouth. Thomas backed up, angry. No, he wasn't graceful. He wasn't some perfect cowboy from the stories. He was clumsy, tired, worn down to stubbornness and spite. But he was near, and he refused to forget. The snake slithered closer. Its tongue reached for his forehead. Thomas grabbed it, his hand wrapped around cold scales. The snake thrashed, hissed, coiled around his wrist. He shoved it into his boot, stuffed it down like a problem for later, and then he ran. The landscape twisted, trees grew sideways, the sky blinked. Thomas sprinted until his legs gave out, until the ground crumbled beneath him and he found himself at the edge of a cliff. Darkness below, no bottom, just the cold grip of death waiting in the void. He slipped. His fingers grabbed the edge. Rock crumbled under his grip. Help! 4 faces appeared above. Children. 4 brothers, stacking on top of each other, reaching down. The bottom one strained, fingers brushing Thomas's wrist. Thomas whimpered, slipping. He felt Death's fingers brushing his ankles. Cold, hungry. I can't. His grip failed. And then, a hand grabbed his arm firm, real, alive. Thomas looked up. Erin, breathing, present there. You, how? The cactus spirit. Erin pulled him up, muscles straining. The one with the flower, the smiling one. It sent me back, said you weren't finished yet. Thomas scrambled onto solid ground. His chest heaved. Tears cut tracks through the dirt on his face. He grabbed Erin's collar, held on like the world might disappear. You were dead. I saw you. I was. Erin's voice was steady. But this place doesn't follow rules. It follows what's needed. And you needed to know you weren't alone. Thomas stared at him. The friend who stayed. The friend who death itself couldn't keep away. I chose life, Thomas whispered. Every time. Even when I wanted to stop. I know. Erin's hand found his shoulder. That's why I'm here. Before the cliff, before the fall, Thomas had wandered into a cave. The walls dripped with glowing slime, and inside, 3 women sat on thrones made of bones and driftwood. Each had 3 heads. Each head was a fish, scales gleaming, mouths gaping, eyes too wide. They laughed. A sound like drowning, like every cruel whisper ever spoken in school hallways and quiet rooms, like being the weird kid at the lunch table, over and over, forever. The cowboy, one head rasped. Lost little cowboy, another echoed. Thinks he's special, thinks he's different. They spat. Slime landed on Thomas's cheek. He wiped it away, didn't flinch. Why are you here? He asked. The laughing stopped. One sister leaned forward. All 3 of her fish heads turned toward him. We're sisters, she said. Cast out. The world above didn't want us. Called us strange, called us wrong, made us feel like mistakes. Another added. So we came here, where the strange things go. Her voice dropped. Lower, seductive. You could join us, cowboy. Stay here. Be strange with us. The world above will never understand you anyway. Thomas looked at them. Creatures mated laughter and abandonment. Beings discarded because they didn't fit the mold. He understood them. The loneliness. The not belonging. But he also understood something else. I'm not staying, he said. The sisters hissed. Slime dripped from their jaws. Why? Think you're better than us? No. Thomas's voice was quiet. Steady. I just have someone waiting for me. Someone who makes being strange feel like home. He turned to leave. They didn't let him. The sisters grabbed him. Their bodies twisted, transformed into something massive. Something with wings made of fins and fins made of knives. They lifted Thomas into the air, flew him across a rainbow gorge, colors bleeding into each other, swirling, dizzying. They dropped him onto a sandy dune, circled above him, sang in voices that cut like glass. Everyone leaves, cowboy. Everyone forgets. Your father, your mother, everyone you loved, gone. Thomas clutched his chest, ran. Each turn, they blocked him. Their voices grew louder. A rant designed to hypnotize. Words weaving together, wrapping around his mind like chains. You're alone. You've always been alone. You'll always be. Thomas fought. He shook his head, gritted his teeth. No. The sisters kept singing. But something was happening. Colorful images formed in the air. His father's face, smiling. His mother's laugh, warm. His family, whole. And the cactus, the one with the smiling flower. Thomas reached for them. His fingers passed through light. He didn't see what was really happening. Erin stood at the edge of the dune, blaster in hand firing. Each shot hit a monster that circled Thomas, creatures drawn to the hypnotic spell. Things with too many teeth. Things that crawled and clicked and whispered. Erin didn't stop, calm, precise. He fired until the path was clear. Then he grabbed a rope, attached it to a creeping tree with branches like claws, and swung. Landed beside Thomas. Grabbed his arm. Come on. Thomas laughed. Stumbled. The spell was breaking. You're here. I'm here. Now move. They ran together. The sister screamed behind them. Thomas opened his eyes. A bedroom, real, solid. The ceiling above him didn't blink. The floor didn't breathe. He was back. Coffin climbed onto his stomach, stared at him with eyes that held too much knowing, then jumped down and trotted to the door. Thomas sat up. His chest ached. His hands trembled. Erin sat in the chair by the window, alive, whole. On the windowsill, a small pot held a baby cactus. A tiny flower bloomed at its tip, smiling. Thomas stared at it. "That's the cactus spirit," Erin smiled. "Or a piece of it. It wanted to come with us." Thomas laughed. "Wet, broken, real. I thought I lost you." "You almost did." Erin's voice was soft. "But this place, this realm, it doesn't keep with, doesn't want to stay." They talked for hours, the longest conversation they'd ever had, about the realm, about the creatures, about the sisters and the snake and the vine that still clung to Thomas's boot, about choosing life, about how loyalty wasn't flashy, wasn't perfect. It was just showing up over and over, even when you were tired, even when you wanted to stop. And Thomas, finally, let himself be seen, not as the cowboy, not as the hero, but as himself, dorky, funny, cute, playful, sassy, the real Thomas, the one who'd been hiding under layers of grief and stubbornness and silence. Erin saw him, and stayed anyway. 77 chapters stretched ahead, adventures, nightmares, villains who sang and creatures who watched. But Thomas wasn't afraid. He had Erin, he had Coffin, he had a boot full of snake and a heart full of scars, and he knew, finally, that being strange wasn't a curse, it was a gift, one he'd never let go of again. The cowboy chose life, every single time. The bedroom dissolved like sugar in water. One moment Thomas sat on the edge of his bed, Erin's voice still warm in his ears. The next, walls melted, ceilings spiraled upward into darkness. The floor became fog, thick and gray, swirling around his ankles like a living thing. Coffin barked. Once, twice, then the dog was gone, not taken, just absent, like a candle blown out. Thomas stood. His boots found solid ground somewhere beneath the mist. The vine was still wrapped around his ankle. The snake still slept in his boot. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was tired. "Erin," he called out. Nothing. Then, footsteps, heavy, deliberate, coming from somewhere that wasn't a direction. A figure emerged from the fog. Tall, broader than Erin, shoulders like a wardrobe, a face carved from disappointment and taxidermy. He wore a coat made of shadows and buckles, and his eyes held the same color as Erin's, but harder, cold, like stones at the bottom of a frozen lake. Thomas knew who this was before the man spoke. "You're the reason my son is broken." Erin's father. The man stepped closer. The fog curled away from him, as if even the mist didn't want to touch him. "Broken?" Thomas's voice came out quiet, not afraid, just careful. "He followed you into death." The father's words landed like stones. "He followed you into that realm. He gave up everything, his future, his potential, his name, for a cowboy who can't even hold a gun right." Thomas didn't flinch. "He chose to come." "Did he?" The father tilted his head. "Or did he choose the version of you that needed him? That's what you do, isn't it? You find people who'll save you, and you let them drown trying." The words cut, because part of Thomas had wondered the same thing. "You don't know me," Thomas said. "I know your type." The father circled him slowly. "My son has always been drawn to broken things, strays, projects, people who need fixing." His voice dropped lower. "You're not a person to him. You're a cause, and when he finally realizes you can't be fixed, when he sees that you'll drag him down year after year after year, he'll leave, and I'll be there to pick up the pieces." Thomas's hands trembled, not from fear, from rage. "You think I chose this?" Thomas's voice cracked open. "You think I wanted to be the one who loses everyone, who watches people leave, who holds on to grief like it's the only thing that's ever stayed?" The father stopped circling. "I think you've made peace with being a victim. And I think my son deserves better than someone who's already given up on himself." "I haven't given up." The scream tore from Thomas's chest, loud, raw, the kind of sound that strips you down to bone. "I chose life, every single time. When my father died, when the outlaw nearly killed me, when that realm held me like a hostage, I chose to keep going, not because I'm strong, not because I'm brave, because I was too stubborn to let the world win." His chest heaved. Tears streamed down his face. "I'm not a project. I'm not a cause. And I'm sure as hell not broken." The father's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes flickered. The world around them shifted. Not a dream this time, a memory. Erin stood between them, younger, smaller. His face held a bruise. Someone's fist had found his cheek, and behind him, his father's voice echoed from a door that loomed like a mouth. "You embarrass this family. You and your soft heart and your broken friends. When will you learn that strength means cutting loose wood holds you back? Young Aaron's hands trembled, but his voice was steady. That's not strength, that's just cruelty wearing a nice coat. The memory dissolved. Thomas stood in the fog again. Aaron's father faced him. The cold mask had slipped, just slightly. He defended you, the father said quietly. Even before he met you, he defended the idea of you, of someone who needed saving. He doesn't want to save me, Thomas replied. He wants to walk beside me. There's a difference, is there? Thomas looked the man in the eye. You lost your son a long time ago, not because of me, because you tried to make him something he wasn't. And now you're standing here, in a realm built from grief, trying to blame me for a fracture that started long before I existed. The father went rigid. Silence. You think you're the first person to tell me I'm too much, Thomas continued. Too strange? Too broken? Too inconvenient? He stepped closer. My father died thinking I wasn't enough. My mother left thinking I was too much. And every person in between has looked at me like I'm a problem to solve or a weight to carry. His voice broke. But Aaron looks at me like I'm just me, and he stays anyway. Not because he has to. Not because I trapped him. Because he wants to. The father stared at him. Something moved behind his eyes. A crack in the wall. You don't get to tell me who I am, Thomas said. And you don't get to tell your son who to love. And if he drowns trying to carry you, then he drowns beside me. Not because I pulled him under. Because he chose the water. The words hung in the fog, heavy, true. A figure emerged from the mist. Aaron. He looked between his father and Thomas. His face held exhaustion and defiance in equal measure. Father. Aaron. The older man's voice was rigid. You heard every word. Aaron stepped forward, stood beside Thomas. Their shoulders touched. He's right. You lost me when you decided that love was something to be earned through performance. That worth was measured by how little you needed others. I wanted you to be strong. No. Aaron's voice cut through the fog. You wanted me to be alone, like you. Because if I needed anyone, that meant you had failed. And you couldn't stand the thought of failing. The father's jaw tightened. I'm not leaving, Thomas, Aaron said. Not because I'm trapped. Not because I'm broken. Because for the first time in my life, someone sees me and doesn't ask me to be smaller. He'll drag you down. Maybe. Aaron's hand found Thomas's. But at least I won't drown in silence. The father stared at them. The fog around him began to thin. His form flickered, less solid now. More shadow than substance. You've made your choice. I made it years ago. Aaron's voice was quiet. You just weren't listening. The father's shape dissolved, not violently, just faded, like a photograph left too long in the sun. But before he disappeared completely, his voice echoed through the mist. Then I hope you're right, because the world doesn't forgive soft hearts. And then he was gone. Thomas and Aaron stood alone in the fog. Thomas's hand trembled in Aaron's grip. I didn't know he could do that, Thomas whispered. Visit like that. He can't. Aaron's voice was tired. Not really. That was just grief wearing his face. Guilt. The part of me that still wonders if he was right. Was he? Aaron turned to face Thomas. His eyes held something fierce. No. He squeezed Thomas's hand. He was wrong about me. And he was wrong about you. How do you know? Because I'm still here. And I'm not drowning. Thomas laughed. Wet. Broken. I'm a lot to carry. I know. Aaron smiled. Small, real. But I've got strong arms. The fog lifted. They stood in the bedroom again. Coffin snored at the foot of the bed. The baby cactus on the windowsill glowed faintly in the moonlight. Thomas sat on the edge of the mattress. His body ached. His heart felt scraped clean. Thank you, he said quietly. Aaron sat beside him, close enough that their knees touched. For what? For choosing the water. Aaron's hand found his shoulder. I'd choose it again. Every time. They sat in silence. The kind of silence that holds you, not empty, full of things that didn't need words. Thomas stared at the wall. The cactus flower smiled. I think I'm starting to understand something, he said finally. What? That being loved isn't about being easy. It's about being real. Aaron nodded slowly. My father spent his whole life trying to be easy, trying to be what people expected, and he ended up alone anyway. And you? I ended up here. Aaron's voice was quiet, with the stubborn cowboy who carries grief like a second spine. And I wouldn't change it. Thomas turned to look at him. I'm not always going to be okay. I know. Some days I might not be able to get out of bed. I know. Some days I might push you away. I know. And you'll stay. Aaron's answer was immediate. Yes. Thomas closed his eyes. The grief was still there. It would always be there, a weight he carried in his chest. But something had shifted. It wasn't drowning him anymore. It was just his, and he could carry it. one step at a time, with Erin beside him, with coffin at his feet, with a cactus that smiled in a boot full of snake and a heart that had finally learned to stay open. The road ahead stretched long and strange, but Thomas wasn't afraid. He was ready. The cowboy chose life, and for the first time, he believed he deserved it. The autumn wind didn't howl. It whispered, threading through the wooden beams of the saloon porch like a mournful violin. The sky was bruised purple and charcoal, the sun dipping below the horizon like a coin dropped into a deep well. A year had passed. A year of quiet mornings, a year of Emma learning how to be a mother again, and Thomas learning how to be a son without the weight of his father's goals sitting on his shoulders. The town was still, the dust settled. The outlaw was a memory that didn't ache as much as it used to. Thomas stood on the edge of the sidewalk. The wood creaked under his boots, real boots now, worn at the heel, scuffed from walking pads that belonged to him, not to a legacy he never asked for. Beside him stood Emma. She looked different, softer. The sharp edges of survival had been sanded down by the sheriff's steady love and the quiet joy of a home that finally felt safe. She didn't hold Thomas's hand, but her shoulder touched his, a silent anchor. But Erin stood in front of them, a travel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked like a storybook illustration come to life. Sharp suit, eyes bright with the reflection of stars that weren't visible yet. He looked ready. He looked terrified. He looked whole. The horses waited. A carriage that would take him to the train station, and from there, to the stars, to the places he'd only read about in books while trapped in that classroom with the smartboard and the rows of desks. He wasn't coming back, not because he was leaving Thomas behind, but because Thomas didn't need to be carried anymore. So, Thomas said, his voice cracked on the single syllable. So, Erin echoed. A sad, crooked smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. This is the part where the music swells, right? Where we say something profound. I don't have anything profound left. Thomas's hands trembled at his sides. I used it all up in the fog. You have enough. Erin stepped closer. You always did. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. It wasn't empty. It was stuffed with every unspoken word, every shared silence, every night they stayed awake while the world tried to break them. I'm not leaving because I want to, Erin whispered. The wind tugged at his hair. I'm leaving because I can, because you made me believe I was allowed to want things for myself. Thomas swallowed hard. The lump in his throat felt like a stone. You saved my life. No, Erin shook his head firmly. I didn't save you, Thomas. I just held the lantern while you saved yourself. There's a difference. And now you're taking the lantern. I'm taking the light. Erin's eyes glistened. And I'm going to see where it leads. Thomas reached into his coat. His fingers found a small pot. The baby cactus. The one with the smiling flower that the spirit had given them. It had grown a little in the past year, stronger, greener. A tiny thing of beauty in a harsh world. He pulled it out. Erin's breath hitched. Thomas, you don't have to. I want to. Thomas's voice was barely a whisper. It chose you. In that realm. It sent you back to me. It belongs with you. He gently placed the pot in Erin's palm. The flower seemed to glow faintly in the dying light. A small, defiant spark of life. Take care of it, Thomas said. I will. Erin clutched it to his chest. I'll take care of both of us. Erin pulled him close. The hug was not a gentle thing. It was desperate, fierce. Two people holding on tightly, letting go of the rope that kept them bound. Thomas buried his face in Erin's shoulder, inhaling the scent of dust and old paper and something distinctly Erin. I love you, Thomas choked out. The words he'd never said enough. The words he used to be terrified of. I know, Erin whispered against his hair. I've known since the moment you didn't let go. They held each other for a long moment, a moment that stretched like taffy, refusing to snap. The wind wrapped around them, a cloak of cold air and finality. And then, slowly, Erin pulled back. His hands lingered on Thomas's arms. He looked at him, really looked, memorizing the lines of his face, the stubborn set of his jaw, the eyes that had seen the worst the world had to offer and chose kindness anyway. Be brave, Erin said. I'm tired of being brave, Thomas admitted. Then just be you. Erin smiled through his tears. That's enough. That's always been enough. Erin turned. He walked toward the carriage. Each step sounded like a heartbeat. Thomas watched, his chest hollow, his hands empty. Erin climbed inside. The door clicked shut. The horses stirred. And then, Erin looked out the window. His hand pressed against the glass. The cactus sat on his lap. The flower smiling at Thomas one last time. The carriage began to move. Thomas didn't look away. He watched until the shape became a shadow. Until the shadow became a memory. Until the dust settled and the road was empty and the world was quiet again. Emma's arm slid around his waist. She didn't say anything. She didn't offer platitudes or promises. She just stood there, solid and real, her warmth seeping into his side. Thomas leaned into her. "He's gone," he whispered. "He's free," Emma corrected gently. "And so are you." Thomas closed his eyes. The tears finally fell, hot and fast and cleansing. He cried for the boy who thought he was unlovable. He cried for the friend who saw him when he was invisible. He cried for the future that was uncertain and vast and terrifying. And he cried for himself. For the stubborn, strange, broken, beautiful cowboy who finally learned that letting go wasn't the same as losing. The saloon doors creaked behind them. The sheriff stepped out. Emma's husband, a good man, steady. He didn't speak, just placed a hand on Thomas's shoulder, firm and reassuring. A family, fractured, rebuilt. Strange as the stars began to appear, one by one, pinpricks of light in the velvet dark. Somewhere out there, Arian was traveling among them, carrying a piece of Thomas with him. Thomas took a shaky breath. The cold air filled his lungs. It tasted like dust and endings and new beginnings. He looked down at his boots. The snake was gone, released months ago. The vine had withered and fallen away. He was just Thomas now, just a cowboy, just a man, just enough. The wind whispered through the town one last time, carrying with it the faint sound of a smile. And Thomas stood still, heartbroken, whole, free. The night the mask broke, the cowboy who cried. Act 1, the clearing. The cactus stood tall in the moonlight. She had grown. In the years since the princess's death, her descendant had shot upward, strong, proud, covered in spines that caught the silver light. A single flower crowned her highest point, glowing faintly, a silent guardian over the desert. Tommy knelt in the sand before her. Not Thomas anymore. Thomas had been a mask. Thomas had been the helpful one, the bubbly one, the one who smiled until his face cracked. Thomas had been the performance. Tommy was just the boy underneath. Tired. Broken. Done. He had been sitting there for an hour. His knees ached from the hard ground. His eyes burned from tears he hadn't let fall. His chest felt hollow, scraped out by years of pretending. No one saw me. The realization had come slowly, then all at once. His mother loved him, but she loved the son she could count on. The village appreciated him, but they appreciated the help. The cowboys tolerated him, but only because he made their lives easier. No one had ever looked at the helpful, bubbly, gentle exterior and wondered what was underneath. No one except Arian. He saw me. He saw the mess, the fear, the desperate, lonely boy who talked to plants because he couldn't trust people. And he stayed. Tommy didn't trust anyone. That was the truth he had been running from. He didn't trust the village. He didn't trust the cowboys. He didn't trust the women who smiled at him or the children who clung to his legs. He trusted Arian. Only Arian. Footsteps. Soft, unhurried, coming from the direction of the village. Tommy didn't turn. He kept his eyes on the cactus, on the flower that swayed gently in the wind. Arian sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched, far enough to give him space. The silence stretched. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy, full of things that needed to be said but didn't know how to be spoken. "You waited," Arian said quietly. "I'm tired." "I know." Tommy finally looked at him. In the moonlight, Arian's face was pale. His nebula eyes were dark, full of stars and sorrows. He looked tired too, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of existing. "I've been thinking," Tommy said. His voice was rough. "About masks." "What about them?" "I've worn one for so long I forgot it wasn't my face." He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "Helpful, bubbly, gentle. That's what people see. That's what they like. And I thought if I just kept wearing it, no one would notice the mess underneath." Arian was quiet, listening, waiting. "But you noticed," Tommy continued. "You saw through it. And instead of running, you sat with me, in the desert, all night." His voice cracked. "Why?" Arian's expression softened. "Because I know what it's like to wear a mask. To perform so hard you forget who you are." He paused. "And because the mess underneath isn't something to run from. It's just a person, trying to survive." Tommy's eyes burned. "I don't want to perform anymore." "Then don't." "I don't know how to stop." "Yes, you do." Arian reached out, touched Tommy's shoulder. "You're doing it right now. Sitting in the sand, being tired, being real. That's enough." Tommy let the words sink in. "That's enough. Just being." Act 2, the departure. Weeks passed. The bond between them deepened, not in grand gestures, but in quiet moments, shared meals, comfortable silences, the simple act of existing in the same space. But Arian was healing, and healing meant remembering who he was. The end.